Hello and welcome back to the Double Swing. We are now going to be previewing the main event of Pro League. We did the play-in, we've had the results come in, and well, let's just say mixed results. Some people had a good day, some people had a bad day. I'll let you know who in a second with our full scoreboard update because, yeah, I made some picks that I'm not really sure. They sounded good at the time, but I ended up with only 1 point. GamerLegion going through, pretty comfortable, but Heroic, NRG, and Lin Vision letting me down. Picked the wrong Chinese team, it seems. Our guest, Neokai, was stuck with Tyloo, essentially, when he got to the end of it, which he's pretty happy with now, I'm assuming.
Oh, he's fluked his way into it.
He really has.
It was actually a last
Tyloo or both Australian teams. That's who he had left. And so he was like, I guess I'll take Tyloo, guys. Yeah, that's worked out nicely for him. I do love all my Asian experts telling me this Tyloo team playing terribly online. No way they're going to play good. Okay. Show up and just smash people. I can't. And
Mercury's
then
the best in-game leader, so
he's really, really not. YouM3 2 points, 3 Max and Saw. Your favourite picks, to be fair, going through. Underdog's not quite making it, but hey, you did better than me, so probably pretty happy. That leaves us with 12 points for yourself, tied with the viewers / guests at 12, and myself in third with 10 points, which isn't great. But yeah, joining us to preview this Pro League is going to be Thorin. Some of you may have heard of him. Seen him once before on the channel. I think that's where you'll know him from. Probably one of the biggest voices in esports. Thorin, you watched the play-in. Some of these smaller teams. Any of those teams who didn't quite make it, you think, secretly, you think a little more of them, they should have played better?
I mean, I will say one thing I actually do appreciate already is it's obviously like a new format, and it is actually reminiscent of how like the play-ins work at Cologne and Katowice. Like this, again, it's actually well grouped together. Like the amount of parity in that play was unbelievable. Like I was doing a lot of the betting, and there was loads of people that like close misses. I'll give you an example. Lamiga almost won that game against Pain at the end. They could have made it through. Obviously, perennial online merchants. On paper, you'd expect Heroic's lineup to be better. Actually, I'm kind of shocked that they were so like lackluster. NRG absolutely could have won that game against Furia. I think there's like a world where they sort of like sneak in. So it's not just wild card out there of the like old school players, etc. Meanwhile, if you go on the other end, I still to this day don't even know what like if you want to talk about the idea of a dead team, aren't sort of just like necromancers at this point in time. How are they doing this every tournament? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, none of these matches make any sense. You look at the lineup, it's like that old picture in Back to the Future with everyone fading up. There's no one there. There's not even anyone on the team anymore. Could anyone even name their starting lineup? I don't even know if their own team could name it.
We've been fans of this. We've been following Endpoint quite extensively, you know, as people with British accents at least.
Okay.
We do have to be kind of Endpoint fans, so we are well aware of who these players are. I think we were both a bit shocked to see, well, the end result that came through.
Yeah, to see it look as good as it did, I was like, oh yeah, I have a lot of faith in Muterus or whatever, but I was expecting growing pains, and then it was there's just nothing. So I think, to be honest, our big misses were that, listen, understandably, we don't pick Mind Freak or House Bets, but we didn't have any faith in MIBR or Furia, who do actually make it to this stage. And,
No.
you know, albeit Furia did scrape, but MIBR actually did quite well comparative to how they've been playing, I guess, relative to the tournaments that at the start of this year.
I think my exact quote was, I don't want anyone speaks Portuguese. Like, I just offhandedly just said, none of these teams, coincidentally, who spoke Portuguese were going to be in my underdog picks.
Funnily enough,
and
that is
all
the
of them
top
made
thing
it.
on my, that is the top thing on my Land Rider, believe it or not.
But yeah, okay, before we get into the first pick, which Thorin has elected to take, I do have one question for you. Are you tired of looking like a noob in game? Sick of having the same old crappy skins? Check out Skin Club via my link in the description for a 7% deposit bonus. For gamers 18 or older, Skin Club is a case opening service who run a provably fair opening algorithm to give you truly random outcomes. Skin Club's battles mode has been upgraded, adding new things like crazy, team, and share modes just to make every roll a little more intense and a little more fun. I played a battle or two and managed to win some pretty crazy skins and upgraded a group of them into a gorgeous MP9 hot rod. Perfect for some gold stickers. Skin Club accept a wide variety of payment methods from cards and PayPal to skins themselves, as well as a range of crypto coins. Remember to play responsibly using the self-care tools provided, and use my link in the description to get a 7% bonus. A big thank you to Skin Club for supporting my channel, but let's get back into the video. And with that out of the way, Thorin, take it away. You have everything available to you. Who are you going to take as the number 1 pick?
What's funny is I'm not going to do what people probably think, which is just take team spirit, because I actually think the obvious pick here is just team vitality. Not only do I think they are actually the real number one, but also Ziwu actually in group stages does just smurf every single time I've ever seen him play any group stage ever in the history of the entire human race. So, like, I think there's just no universe where this team fails to capitalize. I couldn't even see the 3-0, so I'm taking team vitality for this one.
Okay, well, I'd have to ask then, because, yeah, they beat Spirit once in a big final, and it was fairly impressive, 3-0, as these things tend to go. But all in all, I mean, they come into the year looking, I'm not too convinced with the way ROPS was integrated. And I still came out of Katowice feeling a bit iffy. So the ROPS integration, for you, how much has it really evolved? Have they just forced it through on the T side? For us, when we discussed it, was CT side, we see these things, these ideas they have, they allow him to get aggressive, they explicitly set him up over and over again. The T side just felt like he was just there. Do you think that changed massively at Katowice?
This is why, though, I actually also do expect... I didn't expect, like, Team Vitality should be the team that, like, plug and plays instantly and works. Like, I actually think this is the one where they grow into it, and by the time the first major comes, I think they'll be, like, the number one team. Because for me, the reason why I actually like this move is if you ever listen to the conversation in Vitality since they had the end of CSGO roster, it was almost implied that Magisk was, like, the secondary voice in that team and kind of had, like, some level of control on the T side or whatever. It wasn't just Apex calling everything. And so for me, the second he went, I think they wanted Mezzy to do that, but I just don't think he has like the force of personality in a squad that big. So for me, I always thought that was the one thing they were lacking. That's why half the discussions were almost a proxy for that of like, what did Apex say to Ziwu on the T side? Like, you know, should he go more aggressive? Should he play the AWP? They were almost like trying to work out that component to me. So I think that's one of the things they were missing. Because as far as I know, someone like Spinks just plays the game. He looks like a guy who never talks the whole time. So Flames is off on his own thing. So I get the feeling maybe they were missing that. So I don't know that it's worked yet. But one thing I did think in FaZe that they did with ROPS was they looked like on the T side, he had the craziest long leash I've ever seen a lurker ever have. Like, it looked like no one ever even told him, like, come now. Like, he basically could for real wait until it was like an impossible 1v5, not least because he had the credit that he'd won some of those like 1v4s and 1v5s. So what I want to see is, it'll probably take a while, but I want to see the dynamic between Apex and ROPS, because I think if you bring a player like ROPS in, you are bringing him in to play his game. You're not bringing him in to like fit him into some role here. You're bringing him in to be what he was at his peak in 2023 in FaZe. So to me, it's part of the negotiation process that they have to like figure out what his like dynamic is, because I do think last year he was off his game. He had times he looked mad ropey in FaZe, and sometimes, by the way, as I said, I've always told the great lurkers, when you fail at lurking, you are just baiting at that point in time. You're just not even good at it. Like, you're not even winning the round. So I agree with you. He's still pretty sweet. He's not peak ROPS, and I actually don't know that right now he's better firepower wise than Spinks. But I just believe in where the project can go. I think if everyone gets to their healthy position in the game, it'll all work out. You'll just be segmented off into your correct roles, you know.
I think almost like the credit of the way that you're thinking about Vitality. Apex is actually the guy that would just yell fire up ROPS' ass if he was playing the round out too slowly.
I hope so, yeah.
But I think as well, when I saw the move, I think for me I was just always believed that ROPS had more ambition, almost like a Hiko, a Cloud9 situation where it's like the team is falling apart and I don't know what anyone's doing, and I just want to win. This felt like one of those moves where he is moving progressively up, and like I actually agree with you on Spinks in that I don't think he's a super vocal active piece. Where before on Ents you could see him maybe be set up for and he could play the round out to his own pace or whatever. That seemed to be the way that Snappy wanted to organize both him and Nerds respectively. And so ROPS is going to be a bit more intuitive, maybe, and just honestly add so much to CT sides that, to be honest, even if he is a bit of a liability on T side, you have a very capable rifler in Flames who usually is the more of a T-sided guy in the first place. So if you've got a really dependable CT and a T guy on your roster, I think you're going to be pleased with that if you're Vitality, just in terms of management.
Yeah, because you're right about Thorin, you brought up the long leash that he seemed to have. And that was obviously a problem for a lot of us. When he wasn't calling his own number to be aggressive, when he wasn't trying to push things a little bit, it did feel like, well, with combination of hairband Frozen, we're like, there's too much passivity. There's not enough. But this team doesn't really have Frozen. Mezzy's sort of a pack support almost. Flamesy, hard, aggressive player. Like, if you give him the opportunity, if you allow him to actually go fight people, he will. He'll just be like that pit bull in the dog park, just ripping up all the chihuahuas. He'll do it. And they've had a lot of success, I think, at this event.
Dog park, are you going to?
One where the pit bulls are let off leash, obviously.
Right, yeah. Pit one, obviously, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there aren't many left with all the bans, but you look in the right areas. But he has this sort of, they've found this combo, I think, just at Katowice, where both Flamesy and Rops succeeded and found their own moments to shine. But it is going to start looking very different in terms of the extremes as we go through. And finding the right balance is going to be tough. And I do hope that a bit of Apex screaming is going to be the right sort of catalyst to keeping them in balance. Because he can be emotional, he can be very in your face. And it might be necessary if Rops is just off his game too passive, just to get him, even if it does mean his lurks turn into just distraction, at least it's something for when those events happen where he just doesn't quite put the foot down.
So I'll also just say as well, I am sort of in a way on a mini level voting against Team Spirit there. Because I actually think, by the way, I don't know if this is all kind of worms I'm opening. I'll just say briefly, I actually think Spirit has, they might even have sort of been rope-a-doped themselves by the rest of the scene. Because even though all these roster moves looked good for almost every team doing them, somehow we have ended up with the first part of the year. Like Spirit's just the de facto #1 team until they lost the final of Katowice. And somehow actually like them and Vitality and maybe even NAVI look further ahead than everyone was at the end of last year. But I think that's like kind of a bit fugazi because the second that major final ended, I just remember thinking like, well, you can't expect Magix is going to do that again. Like, bro, you might actually need roster move. Like, if we're winning by that, like a tiny little hair at the end after a guy has like a life final for any player ever in a major, like this could come back to bite us. So I think for now they're okay. He's still got Donk. He's still unreal. But I feel like the time has taken for me. Like, I think they need to cook in this first season. Like, I still think there's going to be a world where you have to look at that thing of like, if Zontix has a bad game, now you've got Chopper, Zontix, and Magix have like no frags in the game. That's hard to win against. Like, I feel like we're almost too harsh on Donk that we're like forgetting that like he shouldn't have to do that every tournament, mate. Like that's where you turn it on and you win the tournament. Not like I just think of that one game last year that still haunts me. It's the one from I can't remember if it was like EPL or BetBoo. It's the one where they barely beat Wildcard and Donk dropped about like 50 kills, and I was like,
ridiculous.
You barely won the game, like.
Didn't he set a regulation record in that game?
Yeah, I'm actually just scared of Spirit for that reason, mate. Like, I feel like when you have that performance, you're supposed to be like 13-0 in them, you know, not like fucking 13-11. That's too much.
Well, we can keep on the topic of Spirit because if I'm second pick, I was probably just gonna pick him because eventually T is gonna have 2 picks, and I just don't want him to have Spirit as well as somebody else. So I'm taking Spirit. I have the same concerns, but I think what's cool about the Spirit organization is that they've actually been very good at capturing sort of lightning in a bottle when it is striking at the right time. Like they upgrade their academy players into the main team first year, pretty explosive on the Counter-Strike calendar. They did it in Dota as well when the squad they picked up ended up winning TI the same, or I guess the following year, because they picked them up I think just before the year got started. For them, I think what is pragmatic is that even in the lead up to that TI, they weren't looking like the best team in the world. But when they were at TI, they won it, and it gave the roster a good 6-month window where they maintained the structure of the roster. And if things did not continue to improve, then they made the changes. So I thought after the Shanghai performance, it was okay. Well, now they're going to probably get that same leeway because they have trust in the team. Right. But then they are going to make those pragmatic decisions. And, you know, there's probably going to be Kyosuke from their academy team at some point or another because selling him is probably worth less than putting him into the main roster somehow. So, but if we're going to talk about people that can farm in group stages, Donk is the guy that farms in group stages. He doesn't stop, actually. But also, I think Shiro and Zontix often look a lot better in this stage of tournaments. So I have a lot of faith that they're going to get to at least semis at the bare minimum. I mean, I would expect them to see them in the finals, but semis is sort of the minimum barrier for entry. It's just whether or not this team roster has longevity, I guess, is the growing concern, given that Donk could have his peak effectively like hard capped if they don't make roster moves. Yeah,
the problem I have always with we always like to talk about Kyosuke. You know, I follow a lot of prospects, young players. Yeah, of course, I know exactly who he is and how he plays. And that's the exact issue I have, is always like, he's not plug and play for anyone except Donk, quite obviously. So I'm not sure how I'm just going to make that promotion happen. So I do have a question for both of you, actually, on this. If you do make a roster move, and assuming you're not just taking Kyosuke, putting him in Zontic's roles and telling him to figure it out, an actual player, Russian-speaking, clearly, who comes into this roster, do you have like an inkling in your mind, like who is it you're going to go out and just plug and play? Because of the players who have been at the top in the Russian scene who might be available, I don't know. I feel like I'm gambling if I'm picking up a lot of them, like guys like Perfecto. Like I just feel like these are all massive risks. So is there anyone you have in mind?
The problem is, even though it might be a boring pick, I do like the Perfecto one, just because one thing I was always impressed by with him is, like, I don't think it was all just coming under Blade. That guy clearly does have, like, a special, like, poise in the game and, like, his own, like, vision of what he's doing, etc. The obvious issue there, the reason why I like that pickup is, look, he doesn't really address the fragging issue. He's never been a big fragger, but I do think he's someone where one of the things Spirit sometimes did look dodgy is some of the other players do look like they get nervous on stage, or they just have games where you just see their experience. Like, they have a core of players that was never supposed to be number one in the world. It's just amazing they got there by the end. So the difference is, I do think he's quite a polished player. The issue with him, obviously, is he's done the Dexter JKS thing. We just out a million years. It's like, who even knows what level you'd be at right now if you come into the game? Like, that's always a bit worrying. I mean, also, if you notice, he hasn't really actually been particularly public about what his situation is. Like, he's done those weird tweets where it almost implies that you're coming back next week, and then you just still sat there for months and months. And so, I mean, I even just did that one recently where he was just like, please kick me out of the team or something. Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought this was all like figured out and you run like layaway or something. I don't even get what's going on. So that'd be one play. The problem is, aside from that, is it's just hard to know like what combo you can put together. Because the other thing in their scene you'll notice is they don't really tell us that much about how like Chopper runs their team. I have no idea if there's some sort of like temperament barrier to being in their squads. Like at the moment, no one knows what's going on in Russian Counter-Strike. It's just people going, it's like a bad relationship. People just going between Jim and Electronic and just ruining their careers over like a 2-year span. Like, I don't know what happened when that must have done, just like the Magic's Life game in Shanghai Major. They actually someone just sold their soul to win that fucking IM Rio, mate, because the consequences afterwards have been disastrous. Like,
it might have been Magic's himself. I mean, right. The way he reacted when he won, he was just like staring dead straight into his screen. So it's like, I wasn't worth it, actually. I don't feel fulfilled inside. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's either Perfecto or Hobbit. Hobbit was somebody that I thought could actually have been a good fit for this team back after the Copenhagen debacle. I thought he could replace Magix or he could replace Zontix. The thing is, I feel like Magix...
I've got to say that's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like Magix, unfortunately, is like unremovable from the team because he's the vibes guy from the squad, which, you know, I think Rolls Hobbit would do a much better job at sort of like giving mid-round suggestions and, you know, serving as a veteran sort of secondary leader, but I just struggle to remove Magix, even if he's playing terribly, unfortunately, because I just don't know if Hobbit would gel well personality-wise, which I shouldn't have to worry about. Like, we're professional players.
I've got a question. I want to put this sidebar to the two of you, right? Even though on paper, obviously Magix is the one I'd remove. They even use him like on some Sanji abusive level shit where he doesn't get guns and he has to play like dog shit positions that are like impossible to hold with like an SMG. But even worse, right? The real problem is this. Because Magix is a baller, though, like you're saying, Yumi, he's got the vibes. He's got like that crazy thing where he seems like he doesn't give a fuck. He even played awesome in that final almost as a result of it. Like he never got to what. The real problem is, even though I think actually Zontix gets underrated, he's still a rookie. He's playing under like fucking political circumstances that aren't ideal. You have the stress of being thrown into all these major playoffs, prestige playoffs over and over again. I can give him a lot of leeway, but the problem is, it's the fact that the eye test does make his shooting style look shit. That also makes you like, yeah, kick him too, get him out as well. Like, I want to just look at the game and go, no, he gets the kills. He can play the game quite shrewd, you know, he adds to the team, but he just isn't like a highlight player, you know what I mean? Like, you look at the eye test on his skills, he doesn't look crazy, he just looks average.
He does. It's a weird thing to try to balance, and it's something I have to do a lot where I'm like, I need to see something that tells me you can do it in a tougher scenario. When you don't have someone with their back to you, or a flashbang, or someone to trade, can you still hit a shot? And if he's not going to shoot them in the head, statistically, he's probably not going to hit those shots. And so that's why my kind of main point, a point I try to bring up a lot, is if I'm Spirit and I'm running this academy with this monster that we have there, I'm moving him into Zontic spots. Hush, hush. I'm not going to start broadcasting it, but I'm making him play all of Zontic spots. I'm not letting him play donk spots. As much as he might be most comfortable in them, most effective in them, I don't care if my academy team doesn't win, like, Bet Boom Landalan or whatever the hell they, like, want to attend. Go for it, get your experience up. But I don't care if you win or not, just give me a Kyosuke who I can just slot into Zontic's spots, and all of a sudden, instead of having Mr. Body Shot peeking out of door on Nuke, I've got a guy who almost robotically snaps to everyone's heads. There's levels, and I think Kyosuke would just push them way up if he was actually playing in a Zontic spot rather than trying to awkwardly get thrown in later. So that's my problem with Zontix. It's like, I don't see the eye test that says he can be like this really high-level rifler that wins independent of how well the team sets him up to win. That's my problem with him.
You're missing the advanced analysis at counter game in that Zontix aims at, like, if a player is crouched head level, and Donk aims at actual head level. And so they don't know which one to counter. If they crouch too much and it's Zontix entering out from spots, then it's an instant headshot and Zontix suddenly just looks better.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather bet on a great rifler pulling down than Zontix pushing up. Like, what are we talking about?
It's a reach. It's a reach.
It's a reach and a half. But I don't have 7-foot arms, so I can't make it work. That's just not for me. But all right. Spirit, yeah, they should be fine, right? They should make a deep run here. Yeah. We do have this, you're right, this sort of gap where we have, for me, it's Vitality, Spirit, I guess Navi for now, and then a lot of other teams still working their way up.
Isn't everyone just making it Navi by default because of last year? Because I feel like they've shown enough, like, you've got some questions to ask about them. Still, they're another team that stayed hold on the transfer market, and who knows yet if that's right, yeah?
Yeah, and look, this year they've lost only to Spirit. Like, they've played Spirit 4 times, beat them once, lost 3 times. Like, I'm pretty sure, if I'm going through this match history correctly. No, not even that many times. They've only played them 3 times, yeah. But still, that's the extent of their losses, so I guess they do get kind of that credit. And that is why I'm going to pick them, to be fair. Because I did put a ticking clock on Na'Vi kind of being able to win events this year. Because I do believe that eventually teams like FaZe, I thought teams like Vitality would take a little more time to do this, but they immediately just overtook them after one real event. And even teams like G2, I thought would just, once they get their pieces back in place, and sure, in G2's case, it's very firepower dependent rather than anything else. But once they get the pieces in place, they've technically all upgraded to us in certain ways. They would just be able to outfrag Na'Vi, who just don't have the individuals. I did also have to put this point out there when it was said to me, what if they don't win anything this year? I was like, they still have Blade. They still have a great coach. They still have a great IGL. And they have pieces who have impressive ceilings. Let's put it that way. Bit, I mean, in terms of the opposite of Zontix, has the eye test to be one of the 5 or 3 best riflers in the world. Probably 5 best players. If he's actually able to unlock it, use it in all scenarios. Currently, it's very situation specific and he has to be set up in certain ways, but it's still very effective. JL, I mean, he won a major almost single-handedly for this team. He has that sort of ultra X-Factor ability to just unlock, and that has been enough for them. Between the two of them, with Imma's little contributions between his calling and his kind of extremity opening sort of plays.
He's had events.
He's had pop-off events. He has pop-off events. I mean, sure.
And he does keep those peon eco fraggers down. He keeps them fucking crushed under his iron fucking gauntlet, of course. So.
He really does. Do love the correlation between his opening kills and the buy situation. But anyway, they have enough there that where I can believe they can just prep and call and just strategize and put something together to win an event like this, whilst everyone else besides Spirit and Vitality is still working their way up. And they've shown us that in the less important game, but still, game nonetheless, they can beat Spirit now. They have done it again. They have replicated the feat. They only managed it once last year. Hopefully this isn't the only time they manage it this year, or they'll just have to dodge them in the bracket. But I think Na'Vi have a real chance to go deep. I pose this question to the both of you. I like the idea of replacing Wonderful, always have, pretty much since he started on this roster. Simple is often the name thrown out there. Do we believe that bringing back at least the version of Simple we've seen so far in CS2 with our limited exposure to him would be an outright upgrade, or would it be another investment in a risk to be taken?
I just think I feel like this is the only conversation that people ever have around Na'Vi, unfortunately, is that, like,
it's
Wonderful
just
doesn't...
so right there, though, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I know, but it's because also people want to see Simple back, and it's like, this is the most vulnerable roster with the most ability to actually pull Simple straight in. I actually just don't think it is a good move. I don't think Simple has shown to be conducive to working with, like, a communal atmosphere. to me, it seems like he doesn't want that much micromanagement. When he was in the Falcons and when he was trying to use Snappy's calling, it looked awful, actually. Like, he looked like he was cosplaying a bad Pius, which just isn't, that's not how you want Simple to ever demonstrate his skill on a server. Like, sitting in static angles, not moving ever as like an anchor AWPer. I don't know what we're doing here if that's the version of Simple you want to try and bring into something like NAVI. And I think it would change too much of their game plan, that the version of NAVI that we see now is like the tactically minded and I guess the most tactically adept team in Counter-Strike right now. I don't think that would exist if you pulled Simple in, because you'd have to finagle your strap book so that Simple could be more comfortable, and you'd have rounds where you activate him particularly. So I don't like that move. Every time it's suggested, I always just feel like I have to veto it.
The problem I have with this move is, like, my only real reason to want it is the aforementioned, I just like Simple to play CS again. So if I have to crowbar it in, then it's like, well, it's the only one. Oh, maybe there is a way, but I actually don't think it's a very good move. Like, there's two reasons why. One is Simple's entire identity as a player was always like, sentence one, I am the best player in my team and probably the server. Then it went to like, can I work with my teammates? How are we going to call? Do I have like a voice in the call? And that all flawed because he always fulfilled step one. He was always the best player on the team and in the server. The problem is he clearly isn't going to be that on day one. And actually right now you can't even guarantee it would happen again. Like, it's really hard to be number one right now. People like Donk are doing historic stuff. Zimu's still fucking unbelievably good. Monacy's out there in G2. Like, it's just like, it'd be so hard to meet that requirement. And the problem I have is, this is actually a rare example of where I don't even think you'd be doing a plug and play. Like, if you put him in the Wonderful spots, I've always said, I actually think Wonderful is mildly limited by the Blade system. They don't look like they give him like a green light for every peak or every like CT push you want to. Sometimes it looks like he just holds a line, and that's actually what you're relying on if you're Blade and Lexi. Be like, right, he's cutting off this angle here, or the crossfires set up like this, or someone's going to throw a flash for him or whatever. If you bring in Simple, you are bringing him in theory to be like your star player. I mean, that also that would be the other bird you're trying to kill, right? You're trying to also like upgrade Wonderful and have like a true star player. Because I'll notice everyone's on my side now. Everyone laughed when it was the summer last year, and they were all posting those like 1.2 ratings, all the players. That was fugazi as fuck, boys. Like, that was never whole. Like, no one actually, if we did one of these drafts for those players and you all take the NAVI players, I'd be sat with like fucking Donk and fucking, you know, I got Flames. I'd have unbelievable players that like could work in any system, whereas no one knows actually how these players work outside their system. And then the other part is this. The actual most disturbing part, if you hope Simple comes back, in my opinion, is actually how Blade has messaged around that topic. Blade has never even opened the door that this move could happen, by the way. Like, in my Reflections interview, you basically denied it was the case that they were even thinking about this last year. I think they were, by the way. I absolutely think if they hadn't won that major, there's a reason he was there. They were almost setting up like the soft sell of like, hey, he's going to be like sixth man and he'll try it, you know, and then what you do is behind the scenes, sorry, Wonderful, you didn't make it. Simple's back. Or Emma, whichever way you wanted to go on that one. I feel like they were setting that up. But I get it. It's gamesmanship. If you succeeded without him and you're not bringing it back and you want to empower the players now, you just say it never was the case. But the other problem is this. In the meantime, it's allowed Blade and Alexi B to realise, it's actually really awesome being number one and then not having the guy everyone says it's because of. Like, wait, now everyone acknowledges I'm the best IGL, I'm the best goal. I think they like that, bro. Like, I think Blade even said something along the lines of, like, it was the most satisfying to win that major with, like, this NAVI. Well, remember, the one he won with before, some people think it's like the greatest lineup to ever play Counter-Strike. It was like unbeatable. Like, that was the one where like Simple in the team could have a 1.45 rating. Like, that was like, in theory, on paper, you're never supposed to say a team's better than that. So to me, that implies Blade got into the idea that people do follow his system and he has a lot of like control over them that potentially might not be there with Simple. So I have to say, I even though I do think they still need to do something, I don't think they can just hold with this roster. In fact, I'll even add in as well, there's more tournaments at BO5 finals, so it's going to be harder to nick some of those trophies. I always thought NAVI was one of the best teams I've ever seen. For in a BO3, they can always get a veto that's doable. But man, in BO5s, it gets sketchy for them. When you get a map 4, you never fucking know. So the funny thing is, if I actually wanted to bring Simple back, I wouldn't do it for NAVI. I would do it for FaZe. Because the difference is, if I'm getting ye old Brokey out and I'm bringing Simple in, and I've got Carrigan, mate, that's like a soap opera I want to watch episode 1. I want to see what happens in that one. Like, that's good. I don't want to see the happy family of NAVI broken apart and all fucking drama in. And in some ways, I can fuck with them just keeping the current lineup. I don't know what they change other than that, though. I think they're in top spot.
It's almost like that weird fanfic version of what the Falcons thought they were going to have. We're like, oh yeah, they're targeting Apex and Nico and Simple. And everyone's like, well, everyone's going to be at each other's throats. But I actually want to watch that because I think it'll be hilarious, you know?
Of course.
Yeah, and that's the problem I have, though. Is I bring up, obviously, the easy, obvious move that we've all talked about. But the point of Blade having finally achieved what he literally, not sure literally, but might have described as, I might be misremembering the quote, the master plan, spoke to a certain amount of ego and desire for credit. It's sort of, yeah, this is my creation, this is my magnum opus, really.
One time back in the day, when this is a great story everyone will appreciate, when Shocks used to play in Happy's Envious team, right? And at the time, Happy was actually the star player. If you remember, he took all Shocks as lurk spots. He used to just farm, and Shocks, unironically, was used like some throwaway peon entry fragger, even though he was like the greatest player in French history at this time. One time, Happy said to me, he goes, there's such a thing as star player ego? And I go, yeah, mate, and you know what else? There's also in-game leader and coach ego. That's your problem. You just aren't aware that the other one exists. Like, I think for real, this is like fucking transformed who Blade is, mate. Before that, he was just the professor, doing all his notes and giving his like fucking, you're gonna follow the plan, guys. Now he is, like you say, it's like, I've just gonna open my folder here, marked Master Plan 2025. like that's almost the vibe you get now. He's like, he's embraced being the fucking professor, and
he really has. And I look at the academy a lot. I watch the academy play a lot for Navi, and I'm just thinking, how on earth am I going to bring any of these guys up? Because there's talent on there. And maybe not, there's not an AWP 1-for-1 replacement, I don't think. There's much of an upgrade there. But in terms of the riflers, there's a lot of really strong riflers in that academy. But how many of them are actually going to be able to thrive if I'm bring them out of this sort of looser academy style play? They don't play really the same way. And just tell them to start being forced into the very narrow sort of purview of each rifle player or every role on this team. I do struggle to then extend that to other players from outside of the Navi, even academy system. Who the hell can I really bring in? That's why the AWP one seems the simplest, because in theory, big green is big green. Like, even if it is just hold a line, maybe Simple won't whiff those shots that throw away so many rounds for Navi. Maybe the system doesn't fall apart just because he has that extra gear, but
by the way, it's too late now. But the joke is, everyone said his name a million times. There's not many options. I actually think someone like Sumpire said she would be amazing in this team. I think that would be like a pretty good upgrade. I'd go for a move like that. It's probably too late now, of course, but
he just looks like a shell of his former self currently on Heroic. So I think even if you wanted to justify that move now, like you look at how he's doing on Heroic, and he is just missing like a lot of shots that he is supposed to hit, and it's actually it's pretty devastating to watch because that he's supposed to be the star power on that team.
Yeah, that's been rough. But we don't have to talk about Heroic anymore because they didn't make it out of the play-in. Rather disappointing.
Sure.
But I do have a second pick. Back-to-back picks in the Snake Draft, and we've now reached a point, right, where we've taken the big three, like the current three teams, and I either load up on iffy favorites, I guess put it that way, because for me, even Navi is a far third choice to those two, or I start trying to find value in these underdogs, that's going to be difficult. I'm instead going to put my eggs in the coin flip basket. I'm going to take Eternal Fire. Because they are the two-face for me of the scene right now. The ultimate rough and smooth. The team who have this magnificent ceiling and this horrifically low floor.
It's crazy how many teams they can lose to, isn't it?
It really is. And they showed us that in the play-in where, sure, they still made it out 3-1, and the games they won mostly seemed pretty successful. But that loss to Tyloo, the way I've sort of defined Eternal Fire's flaw is the moment you start actually being able to fight, just the initial fights, the fights they're actually trying to go to, you actually are able to match them just a bit on the aim and force them to win 3v3s extensively, put them into the occasional 3v4. The mid-rounding, the secondary ideas, it's just not there. And Jamyoung, who decided he was better than Xantares for a series, well, for a couple series, was able to basically be that player. Go head-to-head, mostly, of course, and G won some clutches, I think. But primarily the Jamyoung factor just led me to believe it led me to that same conclusion of they have no way to adjust. Once they've been counter-punched, they don't have much more. They just turtle up, and sometimes the series just ends like that. And that's how they end up losing to Tyloo 2-0, which is just alarming. But their ceiling is, as we've seen, they can beat pretty much everyone in Tier 1, including the very best teams.
Yeah. When
they do have all that rifle power flowing, hell, Woxic's no bum either, but primarily those rifles is what makes them so devastating. Xantares, as we all know, probably one of the great wasted careers in Counter-Strike, such a talent. Wicardia has been a player who's a bit of a revelation last year, and this year has been able to keep up a certain amount of his consistency. But the key factor that's made them, for me, even more dangerous has been Jota. Because Jota, we had questions. Obviously, the first time I picked them, Yumi, you brought up, like, who's going to be throwing flashes for who, essentially? Like, how do we replace the supportive element of Calyx? And the reality has been, we kind of don't, but we kind of do. Like, Jota does some little things, but primarily still gets to make his lurks happen, try to find the fights he likes to take, the fights that made him kind of such an X-factor on Sangal. And we end up in this spot where it's like, damn, okay, they can beat us with Xantares and Wicardia having an off day, because they also have Jota on the rifle front and Woxic still being a bit of a problem. So they found new ways to add more firepower to the roster, and that's the smooth that comes with that rough of, well, get in their face, challenge them, deny them some opening frags, and they don't really have much of a plan. But the moment they start hitting those shots and start rolling, almost no one can stop them.
Yeah, it was that expectation that, Calyx before was almost supposed to be like a closer, not someone that gets shaky in playoff games, someone that could be servant as a rock, and then you're replacing it with like a young up-and-coming rifler who's typically been in aggressive roles. So like it didn't make sense, actually, like play style wise. Fuck roles and positions. I don't really care so much about that, but I didn't think he'd actually be able to win clutches like that for the team. I didn't think he'd be able to keep his nerve, and sure enough, he's actually been able to show that and demonstrate that he can actually pull through for the team in that way. So Jota is not only providing that little bit of oomph in closing rounds, but then sometimes, yeah, he does get his play that he wants to go for in sort of early mid rounds. If he has spawns for it, or if, I don't know, MIBR doesn't have an idea or a feeling confident, he can kind of take over in that same way. So yeah, I mean, it's worked out like a nice dynamic. That said, Eternal Fire are also one of these teams that sometimes just play down to their opponent's level sometimes, which is kind of staggering to think about when you have someone like Xantares that should just noob stomp, actually.
He should be a flat track bully, right? Especially, and he did a little bit. Like, they did absolutely obliterate FlyQuest to come through.
Yeah.
But no, I do see what you mean. There is some question sometimes is, can he just bully people? He should, but why isn't he?
I actually think he's like a microcosm of their team's issues, though, where, as you're saying, the heights, if they both hit the peak of their game. Like, the joke is, unironically, I have seen this guy actually be better than Nico in a fucking LAN series. Like, he can do that. He's like one of the only people capable of it. And as a team, they do have crazy firepower when they hit hard, especially, by the way, like, it's why they've basically become the kings of Anubis. Like, mate, you can't hold a sight against these fuckers. If they do like a triple peak or anything, they just get the round and run in. So, but the problem is, I think both Xantares and this team have an issue, which you just nailed right there, which is they don't actually, believe it or not, know professionally how you play against worse teams, which is really bizarre. Like, if everyone knows the concept, I'll give you the most simple one in Counter-Strike. Right, if you're in Counter-Strike and you're playing Dust 2 T-side and it's possible the CTs are saving, you never just do a blind rush B. Because in that world, they might just do a bonkers stack with all nades and flashes. And it's one of the only ways you could basically die. Like, if you do like a really long, like probe, long and catwalk, the odds that someone can ever like just wipe your team is almost non-existent because they're super long range or they're split up of like two people and one person here and all that. One of the only ways you can lose basically is sort of do like a noob approach of just gambling, just doing all. I think Xantares, first of all, in his career, he's one of those people who like you can have skill, but he like over indexes on his skill. Like, he plays off his crosshair too much for me. Like, sometimes you have to realize, like, you don't always have to win the duel. You can just win with your brain or positioning, or you can like force a person into a bad spot. And I think Eternal Fire, I'll give you the contrast. Right, I do think they are one of the best like front runner teams. If you just let them get a lead on a T set, they'll dominate almost any team in the world. They can destroy anyone. But one of the things is, people used to say about Carrigan in FaZe the last 2 years, where when it was MR15, they used to say he does the like golden 29th call. This team has like the silver, whatever, some dog shit 29th call. Whatever their like late round call is terrible. They lose the game off it so many times. By the way, just the amount of times I've seen them give it up to overtime from that's unbelievable. Like, and I do think this is one of the areas why I'm quite critical of MIBR, because I'm with you. If the opening round works, Xantares does the Ferrari peak and kills two people, and then they get onto a site, like, fuck, it's impossible to hold against them. But if they break down into a round that is more FaZe-esque, like a 3v3, and people have to play off each other, and then you want someone to do do some golden mid-round. It never seems to come. It never seems to. In fact, even worse, the amount of times you see like they're the one that get like mind gamed in the 1vx or whatever. It's just sad actually, because I do feel like this is a team where if they could just essentially install the concept of our style works awesome, by the way, against the best teams, because it's like super hard hitting. It's like you got to throw haymakers with us. But when we're playing against a team, especially the ones that don't have the same firepower, we don't have to play like us on the edges. We don't have to take duels and give them fights and have chances where we're just doing a blind call. Because the other thing as well is, I don't see even the casters maybe, and by the way, casters aren't usually watching this stuff, so when they point it out, it's a bad side for you if you're an IGL. The casters make the joke of like, oh, he's just doing like, you know, conditioning. He's doing like 5 times the hitting me. No, that's just, they're out of calls, that means, guys. They've just got nothing left, I'm afraid. Like in that scenario where it's why for IGLs, I do think it's really hard to have young IGLs, even though he's an older one. Like, IGL's supposed to be such a veteran role that you're even doing stuff that you're thinking through, like, oh, that's 3 times I played them, did this chess move with them. I feel like they just play each game almost as though it was like a fresh game. So the sad thing is, I do think punching power is crazy. Like I would probably pick this team if I was in this spot, but they are also one of the only teams that are going to be this high up that could also just come like 9th or something ridiculous.
They could miss playoffs if they hit their real floor.
Yeah. It's not impossible.
It's actually kind of funny though, because you're talking about like, oh, in the mid rounds they get outmaneuvered or they don't consider certain gaps or whatever. The only person that actually seems to be able to ever identify those gaps is MIBR, the guy that left CS to go play Valorant for a little bit and then came back to CS. Like, why is this guy got the most game sense or intuition as to like where the hole or the way back into the round seems to be, not the young up-and-comers or the veteran star players. I don't understand why it has to be him.
By the way, I'm with you on the Jota one as well, because sadly, that is going to ruin every HLTV forum fan, because their brain's always been just upgrade all roles with the fragger. And the worst thing is, this is like some Real Madrid shit, where you know the joke people make about Trent Alexander-Arnold is, the reason he should go to Real Madrid is they don't require you to defend at Real Madrid. You would just be crossing the ball and fucking scoring. Yeah. That's what this team feels like. It feels like they took Calix. They ignored everything you said, YouM3, about how he's playing the positions. Yeah. They were like, yeah, but he's not shoot straight in the head every time. And then they just brought a guy who did that, and it's like, it works. What the fuck? Yeah. It does work.
No. You know, he can learn flashes. He can learn flashes.
Right. Yeah. It does work though. I can't lie.
Yeah, it seems to.
It's a lot easier. Trust me. I've seen 1,000 noobs throw the right smoke if you tell them where to go and where to stand.
Right.
It's really hard to teach them how to flick to a head, and Jota does that really damn well. So I guess that's their logic, right? Arm talent over anything else. YouM3, we're back to you. You have a pick, and all the underdogs are available.
Yeah, and
I know you love Tyloo.
I'm gonna angle for an underdog because I'm gonna. I'm already trying to prophesize or forecast.
You're gonna skip these other 4. You're just gonna violate them and just go.
Well, no, because you guys have already picked. I mean, T's already picked 2 favorites. Yeah. I feel like you're probably gonna pick a favorite in the next round. So I'm gonna angle for an underdog and get ahead of the game.
Oh, I see. Right, strategizing. Right, okay.
I'm gonna pick GamerLegion. I'm gonna continue to put my faith in GamerLegion and Ash. Okay. And to be honest, the atmosphere in this team seems really, really solid. Whenever we get like comms insights, they all seem like everybody's very well tempered. They're coordinating peaks off each other. They play pretty sporadic Counter-Strike, and they are always the wild card team when it comes to these types of events, because I mean, every team does this. They all shift up their strategies, but I think GamerLegion are the one team that actually stray away from normalized tendencies more so than I see other teams do. I don't see the same player playing the same position the exact same way 2 games in a row. And in that sense, I just think this team has a lot of flair, and it's kind of fun, especially when you've got firepower like PR. You've got Thorin, who's been, I think, the sort of greatest revelation to me, and the resurrection of Rez. It does seem like Ash has rejuvenated Rez and his ability to frag on the higher end of his sort of consistency metric. You've already got like a very solid core there. That's disregarding like an AWPer that is solid. Like I think Slend is just fine, not exceptional, not elite, but you know, on the upper end of mediocre or good. So I'll put it there, and I think GamerLegion just always have good game plans, so I'll take them.
Yeah, that's what we knew them in the past as, right? The upset team who come in, and I always said this whenever we talked about them before their roster had real firepower. It's like, yeah, day 1. They could probably beat someone. But day 2, that's just not enough. You just not had enough time to prep enough with the roster they had. Now, Thorin, I don't know about you, but I was incredibly shocked at specifically Res. Like, for me, Towson's not the great revelation. He's a Danish player. I watched him play the Danish Tier 2 CS. Like, he's just whatever, fine. Not particularly talented. But the fact that Res is back on almost better than Oakland level form. Like, he's playing ridiculous, and I've never seen him play this well for such an extended period of time. Like, how much of a miracle has Ash made happen here?
I actually do think, for real, even though part of where he like built this reputation was obviously like the Blast Paris run and then like these more recent lineups where he's getting into majors again, I actually do feel like he does deserve to be like the poor man's Blade, because you look at these players, it's like, bro, none of these players are supposed to be like top players. In fact, the joke is, the reason why he has to work with these players is now everyone's trying to do the pipeline from tier 2 and tier 3 to tier 1, and they even come to his teams first. Like, they just come and take the Flammers guy who was like the obvious person who was fucking working like gangbusters last year. So the other thing is, in this squad, he has done a NAVI where it's like you've got a bunch of players who are just doing it by committee. Like, if you even look, by the way, they're not even one of those teams that have the abusive, like, you go first entry guy. Like, they split it up depending on the map, depending on the position. Like, they seem like, I agree with you, they seem like they have a fantastic, like, internal team chemistry, and like people all understand their positioning. And then you look at some of the other players that they have, like the joke is, it was actually like, if we go back in time, like what, maybe a year and a bit now, it's actually the Slend guy who's supposed to be like, maybe this guy's like the future. Everyone was telling me like, oh, he's so hot online. He's just all right. I'm with you. He's just kind of like an all right op. He's not even the star player in their team. The idea that Rez comes back, there's another one where we're just feeding all the worst, enabling all the illnesses of people on forums. Of course, they all want to believe that if you just put like a player into star spots again, like he'll be back. They'd bring back Forrest tomorrow if they could and put him on like fucking phase or something, you know. But the difference is, it actually did sort of work. Like, what people forget is this. The most positive thing I'll say about Rez is, as far as I know, he had a career a bit like people like NBK and Valde, where they willingly gave up star positions and they willingly put other people in those positions or let someone skip ahead of them in the hierarchy who had like sick aim or something. And normally, I will say, when someone does it willingly, I'm open to the idea it's not impossible to go back and to become a star again, or to like open your game a bit more. Because essentially, it wasn't like it was taken from you. No one said you can't do it anymore, give that here, or you just like had no options left. So I am still shocked because of how old he is. Like, he's just competed forever. But again, he did actually, if people do remember back in the day, it was like aim was one of his better qualities. He did have very crispy aim. He had like really nice mechanics. I even do know a thing I've often mentioned in stories, which I'd love to actually interview him one day and ask him about, which is he's someone who, in the middle of his time in NIP, actually did go to some sort of like physical therapist and redesign his whole mouse grip, because he used to have some insane, like, you know, like 90-degree grip like that, where he was like, he was getting bad RSI injury from it. And here's the reason why this is a cool anecdote, because first of all, I noticed that his game got like pretty decent again right after this. Like, he went through whatever the 3-6 months you have to do, like rest it and all that jazz. And the reason why I bring this up is because the most famous thing about anyone who has an RSI or wrist injury in esports is, if you ever go to a doctor, what they always tell you is you need to take time off, and you're like, that's the one thing I can't do. Like, literally my job is I have to keep moving the mouse every day. So no one else ever does this. No one else ever goes away and does the equivalent of basketball of like reconstituting your shot or something if you have like a hitch in your arc, because they just think to themselves, I can't afford that whole off season wasted, or I can't afford to like have a bad start to the season. So if he actually did do that, it seems like it actually potentially gave him longevity in his career, because he looks like, obviously, no one could probably ever be as good as he was at that tournament because he did smurf that one, but he looks very good in this. So he's clearly the best player in this team, and the team itself is like the low-key sleeper. But I actually like the pick from Yumi. If you're not going to go for a bigger dog, and by the way, some of the bigger dogs could actually fail. It's why it's hard in that like second group that we're all looking at there. It's like fucking tough to pick one. But if you're going to pick an underdog, GamerLegion is probably the best one. Like, if you actually even look at them as well, they've got a great map pool. Like I said, they do it by committee. They even seem bizarrely, and this is alien for players that I don't even know, they even seem to be able to do like the mental reset. If they get blown out on a map, they just come back and then they're like back in the series. Like, this is all like fairly advanced level shit for people who you haven't seen at the majors, etc.
Yeah, the comparison I've always given to Ash and GamerLegion is that like he's like the military commander, and he has his troops actually pretty well drilled. Like, they're probably the most like militaristic team I think that exists in Counter-Strike, outside of maybe Blade. And even then, to be honest, with the egos and the players and how deep they are into their careers on NAVI versus GamerLegion, I think he has a stronger control over GamerLegion than probably Blade does.
Yeah, and he needs it, to be honest. I mean, historically, he's had, if he's not really microed the hell out of some of the pieces he had to work with, he's not been able to get results. And he's had to do very specific, very detailed breakdowns to get the most out of players. I mean, the story everyone knows, I think it's something he's explained in a video, was the Kios on Nuke at ramp. Like, just a specific way to play to beat a specific opponent on just that map. And he's had to go into excruciating detail to do that. So now that he has players who are well, like PR is one of the most talented riflers we have. Like the fact that he got stuck on MOUZ and XT and couldn't get promoted to MOUZ due to their awkward, like, well, we just promoted the full academy team. We have our roster. Plus now we need to reset the academy team to like something just beneath your level. Meant that he was available and they snatched him up. Good job. Like, brilliant. But man, that guy is so sharp. And it's a lot easier, I think, to prep. All of a sudden, he can do a lot more. And sure, those resets, maybe that's more of a focus of, you know, himself also applying that to the emotional level of the players. Like, not just controlling the strategy, but actually being aware of how he needs to influence them. Because I don't believe that, you know, 17-year-olds, a 20-year-old IGL, or whatever the hell ZTR is, have just magically mastered the art of emotional discipline overnight.
And how does this guy just make any roster of players into his players? They just become like his team, and you can almost like take pieces in and out. They're totally alien pieces, and they just work again. By the way, that would even be the most god-tier trash talk. If you were in like the major quarterfinals or something, if you're Ash, you just lean over as you do the handshake with the other coach and go, "I took Kios to a major final." They're like,
how has he done this?
I know exactly. Dark magic or something.
I think that what is funny though is there's almost like a dark side to it, because if you don't succeed in GamerLegion and you don't like play
no
well,
believe in you then.
Everyone's like, listen, this guy can min-max the hell out of people, and you didn't make it. What's it's hard to sell yourself afterwards. Like, trust me, guys, it was just the system.
Yeah, where is Vault actually?
Yeah, where's Kios?
Guys, they're all gone, mate. They're all done. Yeah, they're all just done at this, but they're all exiled. I also love the fact as well, like, this is where even MOUZ can't actually take all the credit, because they're like, we are geniuses. We got them all from our academy. It's like, yeah, the joke is you actually had like 2.5 times an academy squad worth, and you've been giving them away now. Like, oh, I can't hold all these prospects. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Too many fucking sick players. What am I doing? Oh, bloody hell. No, IGLs, bizarrely. Yeah, we're not IGLs. Yeah,
probably
got rid of them in the end.
You probably kick themselves over that Slend guy, though, because honestly, as much as I rated Slend on MOUZ and XT, and early on in GamerLegion, when they were not attending tier 1 lands over and over and over again, when they were still having to grind online a bit, he was strong. And I think that level is still yet to come from him. That's what's crazy, is I think there's still a level he can find above what he's shown so far, because a 0.99 rated AWPer, I don't have much time for, but I don't think that's who he is.
You know what's sad? I think YouM's actually played us here, because there's a chance any of our picks might not make it, but I actually do think of the bottom 8, I would take GamerLegion as the obvious one to make the playoffs. I think they just sneak through, so it's actually not a bad tactical pick here.
That was my coin flip between picking my favourites out, getting the best of what I perceive to be the favourites, and getting the best underdog. But I think there's enough of a case to make for other players.
And also just like to shout out IMD, who's the assistant coach at GamerLegion, because apparently he doesn't get enough credit, and he's like a lot of the analysis anti-striding guy. So
never heard of him, but he must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Put it that way. All right, Thorin, 2 picks back to back. Who are you going with first?
See, here's the problem. Since I've got 2, fucking hell. Like, one of my, I'll tell you what immediately is a massive indictment of the team G2, is that I'm not instantly taking them, even though, look, Morty hasn't been good for a while, but on paper, he should be like a player that tomorrow could wake up and actually be the best player in the world. But I actually low-key despise this G2 team. And what's weird is, like, the pieces aren't even bad. Like, I even like Heavy God as a player. I just think that's not going to work in their squad. Like, I do think, sadly, it's made MOUZ like a better player, but a worse version than Nico. Monacy just isn't himself. Heavy God, they're still working him into the roster. I do just think Snacks just calls some absolute bollocks stuff like that. At this point in time, all you need to know is Nart out here has to show clips where Snacks fakes using a scout and then sells it. That's his like 10-level deep Jenga. No. I want real strats. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
to Snacks' credit, those videos also those videos have also just gone downhill. Like, if we're talking about like the random clips you see on Twitter, like half of the strategies don't even work, half the names don't even hit.
I know. And I just watched it like, what am I supposed to take from this? I'm not playing a pro game where they're going to hear the fucking whatever, the scout, and then go, oh, the bot, have they? I'm just gonna, if you play a normal game, they're like, yeah, no one has any buy strategy. We're in FPL or whatever. Like, so anyway, so sadly, part of me wants to not pick G2, but I'm looking, who else can I pick is the problem. So,
that's why I took it out of fire.
Famous last words. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to send it. I'm not going to pick G2. I'm actually going to say fuck G2. I'm going to take MOUZ Because actually, I was one of the few people who didn't. Look, I never thought they could win that event. I still don't think they should have now. I can't even believe they won the semi or the final. But I did think, to me, they should always have been a playoff team. Because I do think in CS2, this is the lesson I've tried to learn, guys, from watching lineups like fucking Falcons last year, is, bro, you have to be able to shoot guns in CS2. Like, there's no way around it. There is none of that old school, like, finish ends. Like, oh, but the roles and the way we play, that doesn't exist. Like, that gets you, like, 11th place and you almost win a game and get to the playoffs in CS2. Like, I mean, think about what we described about Eternal Fire earlier. The joke of Eternal Fire is they haven't revolutionized anything in Counter-Strike, but they've got some of the best firepower in the entire world. And when they hit you at the same time, even the spirits of the world can fall. Like, it's kind of crazy. So I do think MOUZ has crazy firepower. And it looks to me like it is plausible a lot of it can turn up. Because I think the genius part, and this is the one angle people missed on MOUZ. Look, obviously I have concerns about the in-game leader angle. I think that's a clear downgrade. They haven't looked anything close to what they used to be. But the upgrade is this. Spinks is actually better at Brolan's roles than Brolan was. That you've actually upgraded a position. And so then you look at the rest of the squad. Look, this is also a pick for this tournament. If I had to pick down by the major, maybe by then they get figured out or something. But in the early days, I also think part of the genius is if you think like the two best players on paper, you probably want it to be Exertion and Spinks, right? You've got another beautiful zero overlap position there where they can both play their game to the absolute peak level and not ever step on each other's toes. So I think the firepower can be enough for this one. So I'm going to take MOUZ. I'm not going to glaze them from the fucking Cluj run. They probably would be like top 8 in a normal tournament, but I think they're good enough to get through this one, especially when you look at it's all Swiss system, best of 3. I think they're just fragging gets you through that one. And then I'm going to say fuck it, because the problem is, out of the other names, G2's got the stars. Mongols obviously do fucking smurf most of the time. This is so hard because it's between them and Falcons on this one.
Yeah.
I'm you know what? I'm gonna say Falcons. I'm gonna be a mark.
Are we switching our pick?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm taking MOUZ and Falcons, right? I'm taking 2, you said, right?
Yeah, but you've only got one favorite slot.
So sorry, I only take 1. Oh, right. Wait a second.
Yes.
I'll stick with MOUZ for that one then.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I would have been tempted to do Falcons instead because I do think Nico also pretty much guaranteed.
I thought you were going to pick him. I thought that was like leaving that.
I mean, I forgot I had to pick one from Underdog. Okay. The reason I'll take MOUZ is though I also do think that the firepower is just spread out really well. I think it's really hard for them to have a bad game and not be in the game at all. You have to, and also, I'll just throw this in there, as if to show a sign of the times. There's not that many teams are going to like super tactically outgame you in CS2 either. So I don't know how many teams we think are going to exploit them. If I have to go for a team from the underdogs, like I would have taken GamerLegion. I think that's a pretty good pick. So you
can get to that pick eventually. Like we can break down the MOUZ pick first. It's all good.
Yeah, go for
no rush. Give you time to think. But for me, my concern for MOUZ, obviously, yes, we still have the problem of how long can Brolan pretend to be Shuhei before the accent slips and we realize it's actually just Brolan and he has no idea what he's doing. That's going to be a concern for me. And the other concern has been eternal for MOUZ and will continue. Sure, the T sides looked okay between, Spinks and Xertion and try and get them to work. But once we start having some tactical issues, maybe once we put more bright lights in front of certain players, because we've seen them crumble before, we've seen them have certain pop-off or successful series in the past, we've also seen them absolutely crumble. We don't have an AWPer on the T side who seems to do anything. He throws a lot of flashes, more than one around, like on average, but Torji does not really have a lot of impact with his AWP on the T side. That has been a problem since the Academy days. And funnily enough, most of his problems from the Academy days basically haven't gone away. He's just done so much on the CT side to make us appreciate his abilities that we kind of overlook it. So I just have concerns about, you're embedding this new player, you've got a new IGL, you've got an AWPer who, besides util dumping, doesn't seem to contribute all that much on T side. He can't really rifle either. Like, he's not a great rifler at all. We're going to look a little thin on the ground if that sort of veneer fades a little too soon. If that, impersonation ends abruptly, I think they're just kind of dead in the water on T side, and that's going to be a real problem. So I am concerned about that. I mean, they could, off of Spinks' experience, and Xertion's been around enough now at high level, maybe they could just kind of committee call or like just figure it out for a couple series, but I find it rough. And so their massive weakness at AWP then becomes unveiled. It's just kind of like the Emperor's new clothes. Like, it just, for everyone else, it's unsightly see.
The only thing I'll add is that Torji, as much as I agree his T sides have looked weak, he's gotten even better on CT sides compared to where he was with Shuhei.
That's true.
it's weird. Like it's almost like he was shackled by the Shuhei system. Like he's actually turned into almost like superstar levels on CT sides. From AWPing and rifling. I think he just has like good positional play, to be quite honest. And that's my main, I guess, bright spark for MOUZ, is that if he maintains that level and they figure it out and the veneers don't fade, then actually you have essentially gotten like 2 superstar level players, like in Spinks and
which, by the way, it's not
Torji as well.
Like, think about this. A lot of teams struggle on CT side. It's kind of hard to get those. I agree with you, by the way. If you ever see a MOUZ round when they just get the opening kills, it's over already. It's just, the round's just dead immediately.
Yeah, it can be. But no, the Torji CT side, I mean, he can, I think with the new system, the new way they're feeling about it, he has got a little more, just, he gets to play how he feels. And typically on CT side, he's got the right feeling. He knows when to apply pressure, when to push, when not to push, and he hits all his shots. That's the crazy part. It's just on T side, he just doesn't really seem to have the same understanding. So that's the weakness I'm worried about. We'll see. If they can just win every CT half 10-2, it doesn't really matter, does it? You only need 3 more rounds. Most teams are not going to be able to hold on for that long in our swing-heavy meta. You will just push something and win enough.
I'll also just throw this out there. One thing that actually really shocked me about Cluj, this is why I've sort of like almost been born again from this MOUZ lineup, is I also thought, bro, this is the first lineup with Spinks actually playing in the team. Brolan's a new IGL. Surely this like affects their whole map pool. They looked pretty much just as good on all the same maps, even still. Like, there wasn't even any obvious angle. People were like punishing them, etc. Like, that's another weird thing. You'd normally expect as soon as the IGL goes, that shit should go out the window. People should be finding all cynical angles from practice, or they've seen that one game he played against the underdog, he worked quite strong. No one's figured them out yet for some reason.
Are we underrating Cyclone? Because Shuhei's only ever, I mean, he's called under Cyclone in the academy.
And
Ash, and then Cyclone now on the main team. Is Cyclone just that good and we're just forgetting that he deserves a lot of credit for the way they play?
Bearing in mind, he also did GamerLegion his own team and not pick up like established players, except like Brawler who got roles. He has accomplished a lot. I've got to give him credit. The only problem is I feel like the only reason people don't want to give him credit is they also think he's the reason Shuey's not there. So they like minus that, and then it depends how much he gets added.
It was also the reason Shuey was there. So like, he's the mastermind behind it all.
Job, yeah.
Yeah. To be honest, it almost felt though as if the MOUZ NXT team became MOUZ because the main MOUZ was just doing so poorly that MOUZ NXT were just like overtaking them in the rankings, and then all of a sudden we're like, why aren't we just picking up this squad? Like, it didn't feel like, oh, they're doing so good, we're upgrading the team. It was like, now the main MOUZ team is actually so shit, we're gonna put the academy teams in.
Yeah, it did help that they won absolutely everything at a tier 2 level. Like, it wasn't just we play. Like, they did go out and win CCT Cups. They were just clearly a level above, and so it was worthy of a risk. But yeah, give credit to the man who made it all happen, who put it together, who ran the project, and now apparently is keeping things together, just about. We'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, we'll see in a few months if it all deteriorates to nothing.
Oh, hopefully for my sakes, no offense, it deteriorates now, so they don't make playoffs, and I can catch up a bit to the viewers. But yeah, have we got an underdog pick in mind now, Thorin?
The problem is, after GamerLegion, it is just suffering. Because if you look, we're actually at the point now where, in theory, almost every single team could do something. There's actually no flat-out bombs. Because, like, the joke is, I would have just picked Tyloo or Saw in the past, wouldn't I? But I've just watched them inexplicably, like, win games now. So the one I'm actually going to pick is I'm just going to go for Liquid, actually. And the reason I'm going to go for Liquid is I think there are so many flaws to all these different teams that the difference is I can somewhat rely, though, on player strength in Liquid. Like, I do think that when you have Twists, when you have NAF, and when you have nerds, like, that is enough to get it done in a tournament like this, in a fucking Swiss system, but all 3. That's enough. Like, even though I have my questions still about Twisters and IGL, I think Ultimate's fucking potentially on the hot seat, aka fraud watch. JKS at this point in time looks like he's just going to be squeezed out because he's not NAF, if you know what I mean. Like, that feels like an obvious angle where, by the way, that's where if you're the players that aren't Twists, you also have to watch out, because if they want the IGL, they're not going to kick him, are they? So he stays, and then out goes JKS, and suddenly the IGL comes in. So I do feel like they are poised to potentially do a move, but I think those players are quality enough as it is. And then also, I might criticize Ultimate, but at this level, there's not that many AWPers, mate. Like, once you pass the first 3 or 4, the real problem Liquid had was, if you just put them in the playoffs, you're going to get murked by anyone good. Like, that's not what I have to worry about at this point in the tournament. And I even do think if they get the right opponent in, like, a quarters or a 9 to 12 type playoff game, that they can win it, you know. They have, like, a map pool that's all right. So I think there's enough player quality still here. Like, I think they're actually overqualified in terms of some of the players they have. Whereas the difference is, all the other people, I'm relying on, like, team components, like fucking calling. I think just firepower wise, you can frag you out if you're Liquid.
Almost just off the back of, you have Nerds, who is, well, this year, especially on Liquid, playing
should be unleashed
monstrous
now, yeah.
CS. And then to back him up, you do have Twists, who, despite, he did seem to have last year like a period of just rough, like, oh, maybe he is an IGL, like not really fragging that hard. I mean, 2025, so far, he's back to it. So there's no real complaints, and NAV's always a rock. So I do get what you mean. Just player quality, they should be able to...
Like, they should all coexist on their own, right? Yeah.
They should be able to make top 8. That's essentially the theory. Like, sure, they do have to outplay them. The teams who are ahead of them are ahead of them for a reason. They have had deeper runs with more consistency, or in some cases, bought the right core. But Liquid do have enough to just make one upset happen. Or if the Swiss seeding, whatever they're using, gives them the right opponents, just keep beating the right teams and make it through. So no, they are still a big threat. As much as we may question their actual championship aspirations, because the roster composition and problems with... I mean, JKS is just... How many times do we have to suggest kicking him for an IGL before it actually happens? I feel like it should have happened a long time ago. It just feels weird that he's still here. But they do just have that rifle firepower at the top end to just make it happen. Quite simply.
I just have the problem of them only having played Katowice play-ins, beating the 2 North American teams, making it to the main Katowice, weirdly beating MOUZ. I mean, beating MOUZ with, Zelix when he was standing in, right?
Yeah, that's Zelix.
Yeah, and then losing to Spirit of Mongols, which those are forgivable in normal circumstances, but, if I'm thinking about the teams that they beat, it's with an Academy stand-in and the North American teams, and I just don't have a lot of faith in that. And they intentionally miss out on Cluj because reasons. We're talking money. So for them, if they don't look impressive here, first off, I want to tap out from Liquid anyway, but I would never have the confidence to pick them just because I don't know what kind of team they are, and the teams that they've beaten this year so far are not that impressive to me.
Yeah, but I'm down in the muck. Look who I'm picking among. Who else am I picking? You know what I mean?
Shit here.
Yeah, they're obviously better than Fury. I think, at least in terms of how good I feel about picking them.
I mean, listen, I tried to cheat and pick Falcons, but you're making me pick these teams.
Yeah, we desperately wish we could. We really wish we could. I do want to ask though, like I think again we're talking about the most obvious move, the one everyone's thought about. Hooksey's sitting here doing nothing. I like Hooksey's tenure from pre-G2. Anything on G2, some of his tournaments, despite what certain people have tried to propagandize away, were big wins. I do think he's got some sort of value to add, especially if who he's replacing is someone who isn't going to kill anyone anyway. Like, that's always the biggest critique, is his fragging isn't all there. I'm sorry, JKS's firepower is IGL worthy. Over the last maybe 6 months, maybe. I can't remember the last time I saw a big series out of JKS. And the times when he's tried to awkwardly make himself work on this team have just looked forced. So I don't really see the problem with bringing in, even if he is a bot IGL who's been thrown away by certain other players and turned on by the scene in general. I still like that risk. Is there another IGL that you guys would prefer seeing taken here? Now that Shuei's available, obviously there's an obvious one. But
the Shuei one's an obvious one. I'll even throw in there as well. That's even something I had heard behind the scenes that they considered when the Cadian thing was falling apart last year. Like, maybe we try and buy that guy. You can speculate, would MOUZ let him go? Was the buyout too high? Whatever it might be. That's another move where, to me, that's the weirdest part about this is why I keep telling people, the one thing I heard from MOUZ people was like, people just didn't want him in MOUZ. Because it implies to me, it's not just like we disagree with his calling style. Because why isn't there like a line of suitors out the door? Also, if you already bought Spinks, you clearly want to sell. You want to get rid of him. In fact, from all the interviews, it's implied MOUZ don't want to say whatever the real reason is. They just want to like sell him and then get on with the new mission. So I don't know why he's not just like an automatic chew in to come to this team. Wouldn't he just be a banger to immediately add? I feel like you'd also immediately, if you actually had a real IGL, you can also do this to Hooksey too, by the way, don't you immediately find out if Ultimate's actually going to make it or not? Because isn't half the problem of the Ultimate equation, like, he's also working with an IGL who's just learning the role, so people don't know how much do you say, like, Twist isn't doing the right job. Because I think every like real tier 1 IGL, one of the areas you'll notice is how they use their AWPer. Like, you're not just leaving that guy on the side or like, hey, keep up, kid, get some frags. Like, you build the fucking game around these people. That's why they're the AWPer. So I feel like surely the Shuei thing also answers tomorrow. Can Ultimate stay or not? Maybe he like makes him 1.5 times the player he is, and suddenly we're all saying he's a great prospect and something. Who knows, right?
Yeah, why is he getting traded so much? This is one of my big questions with Ultimate this year. It's like, Why is he the one getting traded? I just don't
By
get
the way,
it.
I'm with you on the Huxley one too. People don't get this meme. It's just G2 I thought he was inappropriate for. Almost every team below that, Astralis, I would have taken him. This team, absolutely. I also look at this team. I actually thought Huxley looked fairly decent when he did play like a looser style. If anything, I think someone like this would allow someone like Twists to have like tons of voice in the team still, but you're just an aggressive rifler, which my problem with this is I don't even think he's been a bad IGL. I think he's just done like secondary caller, frags people, and still IGLs a bit. Like he just hasn't looked like a complete IGL who embraced the role, you know?
Entirely, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just always worried that the comms are like super cluttered. So for someone like Nerds, like JKS, like Ultimate, I think it does make sense to retain Twist and just get an in-game leader, and so somebody has to get the boot. But almost like for the performances in any of those roles, like when I'm talking about anchors and dependency, you want to know if players can enter your bomb site from angles where your star players are, and if comms are cluttered or the system is flawed, then anchor players are always going to suffer, AWPers are always going to suffer. But yeah, you have to give one of them the boot probably to get a proper in-game leader in. So
by the way, do you want to know something really sad? I can't say in the last few years, it's been a while now, but when I still did like the blast in 2020, we could hear the comms. I'm not even trolling. Even in that era, after they've had the Grand Slam run, Team Liquid was still doing like NA Pog style comms of like, to me, I think he hit me. Oh, fuck, I'm behind. Oh, I'm not behind a smoke here. And you'd be like, the round's still going on. Like, I always remember this joke, right? When Fifth Laren finished playing with NIP, he like moved to America because obviously he ended up dating like Smix, etc. I think they're actually married now.
Yes.
And basically, when he moved there, though, he initially was like still playing CS. He was playing Pogs, and he just did one of those memes where it's that one of like that mom with like the kid, like, hey, Timmy, stay away from them. And like when the kid comes back, it's like it was if it was Fifth Laren. He has all like United States flags in his eyes. And he's like, he's lit, not 4 and 3 for 99 damage. So that's like the real calling style. You're making it like a joke. It's almost true, but I think that's just how they call it.
Secretly, the advantage of international teams is everyone's speaking their second language, so they're not as confident to just elaborate. Right. They just say what they can say and then shut the hell up.
Exactly.
It's efficient.
It is. All right, Yumi. You've got openings everywhere. You can go with whatever glorious pick you want.
Oh, fuck it, I'm picking the Falcons.
Wait, here's the thing. You have to do the same disclaimer I did there. Right, bro, if Monacy sat here, how are you explaining to him that none of us are picking him? Like, bro, you actually might have been like the best player last year. We're not picking you.
I literally did.
Snacks is so bad that I'm picking
literally the reason, I mean, I was like, I wanted to pick Falcons, or I wanted to talk about them at the very least, but I don't even know if I could justify the pick angle over G2, actually. As soon as I said it, I was like, "Do I actually really?" Yeah. I'm gonna actually go with G2. I'm gonna go with G2.
Oh, we bullied him into it.
No. I immediately, as soon as I picked Falcons, was like, "Do I really believe that over?" Listen, as we've discussed, Monacy, great player, could just take over series, could just wake up and be the best player in the world. MOUZ and Heavy God, to be honest. For G2, my concern was always that they didn't have enough lead time into Katowice to figure out what they wanted to do calling style wise. Like Snacks was letting MOUZ kind of call his own number. There was a lot of mid-round discussions. It was more community felt, but it always just looked discombobulated. And I think Snacks even said in interviews, like, well, someone's saying we should do this, and then we're saying, like, yes, let's do that, and then someone else is saying do this, and I just need to take more control in the rounds. And it's like, yes, that is your primary role, Snacks, but I appreciate I appreciate that.
It's like, who's in charge around here?
Exactly.
Oh, shit, me.
It's like, wait a second, Nico left, but now we have calling issues. For me, it felt like there was like just a power struggle, like they didn't know how to fill the vacuum, and now that the fact that they did mediocre in Katowice, they didn't make it to the play or didn't make it far in the tournament. But then they've also had now Cluj to sit out. Like I'm going to give them more leeway here because the Liquid angle I think is more. They've already got their 5 pieces. They've not made roster moves. For G2, they actually have the leeway of they've had to make a roster move, and Nico was a big voice. I think you actually will see a better version of G2 here than at Katowice because they would have figured out who actually has this hierarchy of calling. Like, who has more of a voice in the mid-round? Who is calling the early strats? Are they going to go for set pieces? I think they'll have had more time to figure that out because I think just that trifecta of MOUZ, Heavy God, Monacy should just win you games, and they should just make it out of the groups purely off of bullying teams that cannot handle that firepower.
It should, but Well, in Katowice, it didn't, and that's kind of the problem.
I'm pushing the boat out. I'm putting some faith. You know, I did it for the play-ins, and like I am picking FlyQuest because it will be the last time I would pick FlyQuest. Last time I would have hope in the vision. Okay. If this is me picking G2, this is also me having like last chance. Like they need to look good here. Otherwise, give Snacks the boot. Get Hunter out maybe as well, and then like rebuild around this strong core.
Shall I tell you some nightmare fuel? I think if you actually go and look at the interviews done by G2 over the last 2 years, basically the entire Nico Falcon saga or Willy Morty, which he always was going to do, by the way, last year, as it'll come out later, right? One of the worst things that I think is nightmare fuel if you're a fan of G2 is if you actually look, they're sort of implying between the lines that they're potentially grooming Hunter to be the IGL one day. Like that is him. Like they keep mentioning how he like calls pistol rounds and how he's also got like a great mind for the game and he does so much extra work behind the scene. That almost sounds to me like you're setting it up for if you decide to scapegoat Snacks. Wouldn't even be scapegoating, but he would say that, I imagine. And he say, right, he's booted, so everyone goes, oh, cool. Like, you know, the evil is cast out from the land. Now we can just get good old Hunter to do. But I just don't know if he'll be able to do that role. Again, you never know with IGL until they do it. Unfortunately, it's not even that we're trying to be hate on people by saying, oh well, you'll be any good. It's just the amount of people that stick with it and then are really good, and that becomes a whole second career. That's why I do give mad props to people like Apex. Like Apex has completely changed his whole legacy in Counter-Strike. It's not many people like, spoiler, I'm almost certain Twist is just going to do the device and just fucking pack it in soon and just go, what am I even doing? Like, why don't I just stick with being a star player and you can get someone else to deal with all this shit? So there's that angle. And then the other thing as well is this. I think the person who will suffer the most, even though in theory his numbers could be way better, is MALPS. Because what people are missing is this. Yes, now he's got some of the Nico spots. But first of all, Nico, as you can see now and in Falcons, was cooking on those secondary calls, bro. He was making some sick mid-rounds because it's the sort of shit only Nico can do. And Nico's always had amazing poise in, like, you know, 3v3, 4v4 scenario of, like, finding an angle and getting, like, a 1v1 isolate. Like, he already is sick at that. And then secondly, if you're Melbs, there's no Nico there as well. Like, that's even more heavy lifting for you. You have to, like, open around, close around, win around. Like, oh, people don't get the pressure. That's why when I did my model of, like, the 3-star approach in CS, 3rd star is the spot where you don't even sometimes have to be the star. If yours on ticks earlier, no one really judges you from like not hitting the heights. Just judge you if you fail. Like you have a safety net if you're the 3rd star. If you're Malbs now, like people actually expect you. Because if we look at this roster on paper, this roster should be easily top 10. This should be the roster where if you're Malbs, you can be like the 9th best player in the world or something crazy. So I think he's got a lot of pressure on him actually. And then I don't even know what's happening with Modesty. I mean, look, people have done that inference of like, his girlfriend break up with him and he wants to join some other team. That could all be true, but at the end of the day, you still have to fucking, it's like sports, mate. You still have to turn up and kick the ball in the goal or score a basket or something. Like, if you're actually great, you'll find a way through it. So I will say eventually, surely, Modesty comes online and they get good again, but who knows when that's going to be? Will it be now? Who the fuck knows? Apparently it's the last chance saloon for you.
Modesty's lost his work father or work husband or whatever in Nico. So that's, 2 heartbreaks in 1 year. It's a lot to deal with for a young guy. So to be honest, I just want for me, I'm actually putting more pressure on Snacks. Like this is his pivotal moment to actually just be an out and out in-game leader. I don't need the secondary calling. I don't need the trial by committee. If there is going to be a voice, I expect it to be Modesty as one of the best players in the world and sort of reading the intuitive, like the game state. So this is why for me this tournament is important for G2 and probably a shift, I guess, post the major. Nobody wants to mess with the VRS points, but this will probably be like an early warning sign and probably G2 shopping around now if they do poorly at this event.
Oh, definitely. Especially seeing as, think of it like this. I have an AWPer who's had some of the highest heights. Recently, I've got an amazingly aggressive piece. I've got a closing, sort of more anchoring. Sometimes he does a lot of different things. Very well, Heavy God, but he's a multi-tool of generally just rifle play. You're telling me I can give an IGL that and just tell him go win events, like a real IGL? All of a sudden, like if I'm putting in real structure, I'm actually having an authoritative voice who's using pieces rather than just hoping the stars are XYZ in terms of 1, 2, or 3, like in terms of best players on the server. Like I think there's a lot of untapped potential there. So I think they're not just shopping around just in general. I think there's a specific vision that could be attempted. We'll just see if they agree with that or if they do go the Hunter route.
If not Snacks, then get rid of Taz. Like I need a tactical-minded person in the leadership positions on this team that can activate these pieces. Like, if you've got Ashe and IMD on GamerLegion, why can't you have some kind of push-pull dynamic on the server? Like, Navi have Blade and Alexi, and then you're telling me Snax Taz, the remnants of, like, towards the end of their Go era, both shells of their former selves. It's only Snax that really stuck around and stuck to it and tried to rebuild into an in-game leader. I need a properly tactically minded coach or an in-game leader that can, I guess, push that vision.
Yeah, just to finish off with, I need to see something, because I've got the quote from Heavy God telling me how great an IGL Snax is, how great a coach Taz is. Start winning then, please. Yeah. Otherwise, the fraud's you.
That's the metric you're weighed up against.
Yeah. Start winning. Prove it. Right, I now have 2 picks where I have to fill out my underdogs, and this is a buffet of rotting meat, I guess. Like, I'm not sure where I want to go, but I have to go somewhere. I'm going to start with a pick that I typically don't make, but they're here and the teams I usually like aren't, so I'm going to take Pain. I obviously have to give a lot of credit to the big man. BiguZero has been, he's not so much had to frag in the play-in, like, outright. It's not really how he managed to make it through. He made it through primarily off the back of the players who should be fragging, actually, in NQZ and Davideus. I mean, 2 players who've only just... Davideus, we know his level. He actually showed a little bit earlier this year. NQZ, very much all over the shop, but finally we've got a clear event of just him playing up to his promised level. And I think that's going to be very exciting going forward. And there's still talent beyond those two. Obviously, BiguZero himself, strong fragger for a rifler, even if he wasn't so explosive at this event. And Snow, who's just one of those young aimers who has moments. We don't see it all together that much. He plays very simple, supportive roles oft. But when he does get an opportunity, he can hit some crazy shots, make some excellent adjustments. I think there is a lot to be said for them. It's going to be... I feel like the energy they need to get through this is similar to how Tyloo made it through the play-in, where it's like, it's more about keeping the team motivated and believing, and almost through force of will coming through, rather than me outright saying they have good enough players or good enough strategy, anything else like that. It does have to be a certain amount of will and winning the clutch rounds, winning the important moments, having a player or two step up in the big fights. That's more my focus for this roster, but I think they have just enough pieces to do it. I'm talking about scraping a playoff berth here, not talking about a particularly deep run. But given what I have to pick from in the underdogs, I think that's ambitious enough as a pick right now, and it's the right players fragging out coming into it.
Yeah, I mean, cool, explosive team. They have many players that can show up. The 2 that don't seem to ever shut down in big moments actually seems to be Kawez and BiguZero. Now, I will say Kawez is kind of consistently mid and sometimes even below par, but when you lose out on Davideus entries or you lose out on Snow and his fragging capabilities, Kawez actually does deliver in those big moments very frequently. He is kind of like the Magics of this team, I think. But to be honest, I'm worried about Pain because I'm seeing BiguZero go on his Apex screaming at his players arc, where he is like wildly disappointed or frustrated, it looks like, looking down the row at everyone shutting down and or blaming them for losses in rounds, where sometimes he's the one that's getting like entried first, or he's the one that makes the misplay. He seems to be looking down the road, just going like, guys, what the fuck are we doing? And it's like, these are your calls, or are they your calls? I don't know the inner team dynamic, but it does seem as though he's entering that like frustrated, we know we should be playing better, but now that the pressure of knowing that they should be better is on them, suddenly that no one can perform. Like they've all got like stage fright, performance anxiety, it seems to be, on this Pain squad. And I agree, they just need like a good full reset into games where it's like they just need belief, and when they do play that way, they are a very explosive, very fun team to watch in that way.
This is one of those teams that tortures me, because I actually, to give the comparison earlier where I said on MOUZ, I've sort of just believed, like, unless you have like the best IGLs, you can almost get away without even having a full IGL in CS2. This is the team that's the other side. In CSGO, this would have been a banger team to follow. Like, there'd be such a fucking sick little upset team. Like, they grind out the wins. Whereas what you see in CS2 is, first of all, if their firepower doesn't come to play, it's going to be fucking hard work to get over the line. I've seen this team lose so many 13-11, so many OT games. In fact, the sad thing is they'll get a much better squad, like a top 8 team, into like position to beat them, and then they just can't sort of like land the knockout blow, as it were, and they just lose the round. So that's a bummer in itself. Then part of the factor is you look at the squad, and the problem is they don't have the names. Like, they've had to work with the other pieces in the scene. Like, NQZ, no one even knew this guy would be like a top player. He was just like a whatever guy in the scene. The fucking Snow guy is still 17 years old now, by the way. Like, he's mega inexperienced. David Dace I actually did think was a good player on the Red Canids team, but he obviously wasn't in like a big pool there. Like, that's another team that you just expect to go to a major come last place, basically. So, like, there's some firepower, there's some skill, but it's not like they haven't got like established names, and experience clearly is a factor here. So, like, I actually do think Big Azir looks really good, both individually and as an IGL. Seems to have a lot going for him. But the problem is, anytime I see him, I just think, when are you moving on from this team? When are you going to go to the bigger squad and make like the super Brazilian team? Because right now he does seem like he has some like old school tabs and shit where it's like, you just are the whole team, bro. Like, is everything just all has to run through your vision and your way of playing and are you even fucking entry like that guy did? Like, you just do it all. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. The sad thing is, the reason why I say it tortures me is because I do actually, this is the kind of team I did used to like in CSGO. I enjoy teams that are very coherent like this. The other problem they have in CS2 as well is their map pool's a little bit limited. So it also depends who they're playing. They get the right opponents you have a chance to. They do play like the very common maps, but they're not one of those teams for me that can go super deep in a veto.
I think just on that point of, you know, not signing big players, technically David Dace was supposed to be that sort of like bigger name player, like first Chilean representative at a major, did it with 9Z, and then, you know, does well on the Red Canids, weighed down by Nithon, who had the bodyguard to not have him feed like 0.6 ratings. He was supposed to be the more known player, and I think by adding him, they were expecting more veterancy, or someone that could actually maintain the temperament of the team to a better degree. But I don't actually think he's that kind of guy. He just is kind of like plug and play, put him in spots where he can frag, and he will frag. I think they almost wanted a more veteran player that could co-lead with Big Uzera, because sometimes it does seem like the youngsters disappear.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficulty, obviously. If we can't get the young players' heads in the game, yeah, that's going to be rough. But look, we are in the underdog position.
It's not a bad pick.
Yeah, it's a rough spot to be in, and I do think they have the upside to make it happen, which a lot of teams really don't at this point. To be fair, though, I did dismiss some of these teams offhand before, and now they're here again, looking me dead in the eye. So I am picking Portuguese for once. All right, I'm gonna stick to my roots. I'm gonna go 3D Max. That's my second pick.
By the way, you do realise in this group, the G2 of this group is Furia. It's like, bro, like, we're just going to go, sorry, K-Serrato, you have to wait your turn. Like, but I don't even disagree. I wouldn't pick Furia either. I don't know how anyone can pick Furia. Like, it's like, this is it. It's a mad indictment of these teams.
It really is.
These are like sick-ass players. You know?
Screw, like, I can't watch that team play and then pick them to go deep in events, like, ever.
True.
And despite the fact that I did ignore them in the play and they made it through the play-in, we're talking, like... a few miracles away.
You mean to tell me the Amelia Ninja Diffuse versus Pain didn't have you worried? Like,
a little bit, but...
And also, you do notice, except for that one IEM Rio, it's not like they're actually completely defying your expectations. It's more like they're doing some fly quiz shit, like, but we didn't go 0-3, though, did we? It's like, that can't be the fucking bragging point. Like, because I'm with you, they'll make it through a plane and then immediately go out last place. That's what they do. That's who they are right now.
They really, they're not that impressive, and they live and die like that Rio run. It's like, oh, K-Serrato's a god for a group stage. Now we're trash. But anyway, let's talk about the pick. Let's not waste all our 3D Max time on Furia, because 3D Max are a team who are actually fun and interesting.
Also, might not be your team soon, so you better get your shots in now.
They might be something else.
Yeah, also true.
Technically, not much of an org left there, but
true.
Look, they're a team who are kind of defined around this. Essentially, it's a buy-in. It's the cult of Maka, historically. Like, you have to be believing in his calls and also believing in his ability, because he does all around himself and does frag out fairly well. Like, he's not a poor AWPer by any means. So they do have an interesting, unique style to watch, and they also have some fun players. Like, for me, Gravity was limited by having to play the same role as Jocko, essentially, and whilst he still isn't a star by any means, he is now playing more, just playing better and playing up to his level. And I find that very entertaining, especially because he's one of those players when he gets on a heater, will talk infinite amounts of shit, which is lots of fun to follow. The addition of Body, who, I mean, in this play-in, dumpstered people, and getting him off of the IGL role that he was not very good at, to put it generously, in Fnatic, and bringing him here to just go back to being on a French team, calming in French, and just playing with a rifle. He looks so much stronger, so much freer, and just happier to be playing CS. So I'm a big believer in their ability to be difficult to play against. Like, they're going to have a really strong Inferno. They're going to have certain other maps that are going to keep you scratching your head in terms of which way do we really expect them to play. And I think that's going to be a fun team to watch. Make it out the groups, highly improbable. But if they do, it'll be quite fun to watch. So 3D Max, it's a bit of a prayer, a hope, more than anything, wishful thinking. But I like watching them play, so here we go. Take it. I think you're about as good a chance of making it through as Furia, and I like you. So
here's the thing, this is another team actually that has almost like the CSGO charm where it's trying to be more than the sum of its parts. Like, you even look at the roster, guys, if you haven't followed this team, you can't even do what you all probably wish, which is like, oh, there must be like a bunch of young up and coming. No, they're all like fucking semi-washed boomers. Like, that's what's ridiculous. But I'll give them credit. They have done the CSGO thing of like, you just get your head down in the strat book and you just go to town. It's not even that your strat has to be the most revolutionary shit. It just has to work for you. Just has to be very utilitarian, just work. Because I have to say, even though they've also lost some incredibly shocking games, like that Saw game was just fucking inconceivable at PGO Cluj, they have also been in so many games where I have seen them play up to the level of a much better team of much better players, that it is kind of nuts. Like, they're a pretty good like upset team. The problem with this one is it's really hard to put a through line through, and got something like Pain in that sense. Like, who would they actually beat each time and who would they lose each time? I had a really hard time with that. But I have to say the range of the variance on this team is pretty nuts. And again, this is why I have to give props to whatever the system is, because when I look at this squad, like, maybe I could put a little bit of faith that you, KingT, and Gravity. Aside from that, I don't think the Exercise guy's ever going to be a HLTV top 20 player. I don't think you even see any of these players after this squad. It's why it is implied, by the way, probably the right move, strike while the iron's hot. If you can go make another team now and bring in other pieces and probably go international, it probably is the time to do it. Like, even that whole, like, we're French charm doesn't even work because you haven't even got any superstar French players. Like, so you don't have some Ziwu level person. You just have some all right players.
The charm of the French also wearing thin in the esports scene in general. So.
Yeah.
True that.
But then also whenever you see an organization take a CS:GO Empire sponsor, you start, the vultures start circling like, oh wait, these guys need money. They're gonna sell their roster, huh? So yeah, I don't know. This 3D Max team is fun because it's like very online Counter-Strike the way that they play. Like they play a semi gimmicky style where it's like they in mid rounds are at like 1 minute 30-second portions of the round. They're just going to instantly go for like head stacks, so they're going to set up in this triple crossfire at like A main on Anubis or B main on Ancient or something. They're going to go for these slightly off timings where they're trying to catch opponents off, and very frequently they succeed in doing so. And I think that's why they're a good upset team, is that they play slightly off meta. They don't stray too far. They're not massive deviants. They're gonna hold on to their bomb sites at the right times on like 1 minute markers or 45-second markers. They have the right blocking util. But they just use a lot of resources to try and facilitate some of these early round ideas that will very frequently find them advantages, and they can close out on them, especially when you have someone that's a bit more veteran and can still hit heads like Body. So this was kind of the pick I was probably going to angle for in the underdog category, if not for you, T. But they're a fun team to watch because they've got like a little bit of that tactical edge, but then they are, again, one of these better than the sum of their part teams as well, like you said, Duncan.
A little goofy and wild, but no individual that you really are scared of. Let's be real. Like, you don't walk into that game thinking, oh, we might not have the best player on the server here. No, you just think these guys are going to play something so annoying. Like, if you play them in a game,
like that helps them though. Don't you think they're the team that if you're like actually a team with real star players, you think, oh, we're going to walk through this team. Come on, there's no way they're going to beat you in this land match. But then they're surprisingly so resilient.
You're like, oh, I'm going to walk into a banana and take fights against these guys. Then 3 nades, a flashbang, and a jumping Mac 10 or MP9 rather just hits you, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do against this? Like, who does that at a minute 10? For example. But
yeah.
We'll see how much it works, because the gimmicks do eventually wear dry. And then when you have to win heads up, fight straight up. I mean, yeah, as we said, no offense to Exercice, but he's not that guy. Yumi, we're back to you. Your final underdog pick to round out your selections for this draft. Who do you like the look of?
There's no right answer on this one, buddy. There's no right answer. So.
You're the Asia guy. Come on.
Yeah,
I want to, but I can't. Not in good conscience.
I'm going to put Tyloo in there just for you, and then you're going to pick someone to put over them just to rub it in, really make it feel harsh.
It's not my fault. They just changed their in-game leader, and they just suddenly look way better. I'm going to go MIBR. I'm going to stick with MIBR. They beat Furia. They beat Amiga. They beat the team that I'm currently replacing them with in Tyloo, apparently. And to be honest, this team looks far more cohesive now that in-game leading duties are back in Exit's possession. It still doesn't look fantastic. It's not glamorous. It's still very default into mid-round execute. It's very linear decision trees, but you're getting far better performance out of BR Enizan, weirdly, on this team. Insani doesn't look as poor, and to be honest, I think Safe and I think Insani, Safe, and Lucalzi are the main core of this team. If you're going to get that extra edge from BR Enizan, if all these other stars are performing to even just their middling portions, Exit has never really been like this massive deficit fragger on this squad. Like, he's always been kind of like a fragging in-game leader that actually calls a pretty solid game around himself. And it's just a team that has 5 players that can shoot. BR Enizan, I don't expect should be able to perform in these types of stages. But he has actually been playing a lot better since he's re-entry to the roster, so I can only go off of what I've seen for him in particular. So I'd rather them over Furia. I'd rather them over a Sword and a Tyloo, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. My take was always a bit just the calling's off, and then when we changed back to Exit, we're back to a system we already denigrated. Thorin, I know this team's a bit iffy, but what's been your read on the calling situation specifically?
That's the problem I have with this team, is I do feel like the calling has to be essential. If you notice, there's 2 things. One is that they've never actually had anyone who was even qualified to be a great IGL. I agree with you. They did an all right job before, but they used to live and die entirely off the firepower before. And so they still have the firepower. I'm with you, by the way. And everyone's still waiting for the Luke Housey fucking shoe to drop. Eventually, suppose he's going to be better at this. And then they have the firepower, unlike Payne, to actually win some matches. But the problem is, first of all, Insani actually did look worse when drop was IGL. So that was a concern already. He was the main guy I needed to go crazy. And then secondly, the drop one's just one of those ones where it's look, I've always thought he does a good job in bad roles. And then you think, well, surely a supportive player could be in agile. These are all things that make sense if you think them up in 5 minutes on the back of a napkin, but they don't always work in the game. So I don't know if he had the demeanor to be the right caller or whatever. It actually seemed like the last version of the lineup that on paper should have been the best version they've had for years was actually a worse team. It just was. Basically, aside from that little fluke at the major, they weren't going to be anything this year, which is sad because I've always thought this team for me is they're just a fucking haymaker team. They have 2 or 3 maps they can play. If they can get you on a series there where they can get 2 out of the 3 maps, they can, people like Insani can hit really fucking hard. They can knock you out. I even think Safe is somewhat underrated on this team. People they'll never be in on this guy because of what happened in Fury. He's not a bad player if you watch him play. He definitely can still up. He still has his game sense around him. So I actually do think the pieces are in this team to be good, but if I agree with you, if you're just going to go back to an old system and then bring out this player, which is definitely not a revelation in fucking Brazilian CS, this is why all the Brazilian teams are a bit whack right now. There's none of them are actually got everything. They've all sort of I've got these pieces here, and I've got the IGL here, but I've got the rifle, but I've got the AWP. It's can we just have it all in one team? But apparently we can't. So
yeah, they don't want each other to succeed somehow.
I will say, I do actually like the fact that I also think this is a team where really high ceiling, but really low floor also. Holy fuck, I've seen them lose to some bad teams, but I have also, for real, much like that Navi game at the major, and sometimes when I've seen them play Strasser, I've seen them just actually clap better players and real teams and stuff. So I don't hate it as a pick in this draw. They're a team where I would say this is the team most dependent on what the draw they get in this Swisses. If they get the teams that'll let them play the maps they like. By the way, if you remember, they're a team that permas does too, so that actually already can give you a chance chance against certain. That gives you a chance against like the Vitalities of the world potentially. Just depends what matchup you get. So I don't hate them as a squad. I just don't like that they're just not a complete squad. They're just they're so dependent on the firepower for me.
I think of the sort of known quantities left in the underdog category, they're probably the one that could probably punch up or more feasibly could without gambling so much on like newer projects. But what I was just going to add is that, God, it felt almost like the drop transition to in-game leading actually was just like a way for him to prevent getting benched and to maintain stead on the roster. It was kind of like exit, you already frag, you're an in-game leader, why don't I take the in-game leading from you and you can be the star and I can shoulder that burden. But it just ended up making everybody worse. And so it was just kind of, okay, we should have just done this move in the first place, drop Yurgon, Luke Halsey's in instead.
Yeah, I am worried though that I still haven't seen, like, the play in field is not exactly impressive. Why am I not seeing Insani bully everyone? Like, why do I have to see the occasional, like, he's just played fine in every map rather than actually come out and just dumpster people, which is what he would used to do. So I do have still my concerns about certain individuals and their level, because what's averaged out for a team that's 3-1 to have their highest rated player at 1.06, something just looks off, right? Sure. It's like a team who's barely squeaked through 3-2. So I do have concerns about individuals, which are what I'm usually relying on for MIBR to make an upset happen. So I need an Insani to come out and just dominate. I need these sort of players to be impactful, and that just hasn't happened so far. So I'm worried about that. All right, our final pick of the entire show. Thorin, you get the delightful selection between Saw, Furia, and technically Tyloo, even though they are currently hidden under Yumi's underdog pick.
Here's what I hate about this. Like, first of all, I don't dislike Tyloo. It's just obviously seen fuck all, and it was all just clown show shit so far, so I can't, like, put my faith in that kind of. So I already, just for the sake of being a not hater, I have to remove them. I can't pick them. Like, I have no reason to believe that continues. But the problem is then you are asking me to pick between Furia and Saw, which is my Sophie's choice, except I want both of the kids to die in this analogy. And sadly, one of them will have to live. Because what I hate is Saw is not even a real team anymore. Like, they know they're not a real team anymore. They don't even pretend to be a real team anymore. They've almost commed publicly, sort of like, we're not even really playing CS. I don't know how we're doing this. But at the same time, fucking hell, do I have to actually pick Fury? I probably do. Fuck it. Even though Saw wins the games at the moment, I'll just say that, like, at a minimum, I do still respect Keserato's game. I actually think Skulls did get way better when he went back to that team. Yuri's not as bad as he was in the past year. He sort of stepped his level up a bit. Fallen's still whatever. He's just an old-ass guy playing. My joke is he's just like 78-year-old Mick Jagger with the big lips going, it's like, yeah, we all know that one from fucking years ago, mate. Anything new? No, thought not right. It's not 2017 anymore, is it, fucker? Like, so anyway, I'll have to just pick Fury here because I refuse to pick Saw on principle. They're not a real team. None of these wins count. I don't know how they're winning these games. It shouldn't be possible. It's not possible. Well, CS2 was flawed.
I mean, this is supposed to be the new age, the new dawn of Saw. Okay. This is supposed to be the new team. I think they said something like they only had 3 days practice leading into the event, which is not great given the recent roster moves. But this is supposed to be the new direction for Saw. Like the version that we saw with Cluj and their miracle run, that was all, that was the remnants of a dying team. It was already rumored, and usually our rumors are very reputable in Counter-Strike from certain journalistic sources.
Here's my problem with the new version, Yumi, is that when you look at it, you're like, who? Because essentially, it's like I said about GamerLegion. At this point, these people in CS aren't idiots, guys, who run the orgs. They're all aware that there's now a pipeline and you go get tier 2 and tier 3 talent instead of buying people for buyouts. But everyone's doing that now. So now you have to be on some like Arsene Wenger shit where you're looking at like Colombian fucking footballers and Cameroonian. You have to be on some 10th level. So I don't look, either these are the most genius pickups ever or this is whoever's left. I'm just going to go with the latter. I think it's whoever's left.
To be honest, it might have just been like, oh, we'd have to look back at the pipeline. GamerLegion, they're too big now. They're not even really a pipeline anymore.
Yeah.
Endpoint were really good at making players. Let's get Azu and Sejot from that team because we don't want
the last of the Endpoint now that they're gone. This is
effectively.
Right.
And to be honest, Sejot had a life map against them.
That series was a piss take. I'm sorry.
The dust tube from Sejot was unbelievable versus them.
And obviously, underrated angle. No one's realised yet. Golden on for coach of the season, low key. He's fucking cooking.
So, yeah, he cooked up
his rosters. What's he doing?
He's cooked up. You pick up 2 guys who've been flat as hell in tier 2 online CS, and they will, in the dying moments, pull out 2+ rated event like maps. Like, what are we talking about? That final series was a farce. M80 should be here, but Sejot and Azul just went bombastic. But I think we're slightly off topic, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I put it this way: they were up 2-0, and I thought, look, they need to either win this game or they're just not going to have the firepower and they're just going to go 2-3. And they'd won their games using a combination of like the right calls in the right moments, the right players, finding the right frags. There was no real like big fragging output. To then go into that final series against M80 and crush them in the first map with Azulu just for some reason himself having a life game, then to go into map 3 after conventionally losing Ancient and having that ridiculous Sejot map. It's like, you guys shouldn't be here. I'm sorry, just shouldn't be here.
Well, game's a game. And we have to. Well, we're talking about Furia instead, though, right?
We are supposed to be talking about Furia and how much we think Caserato's good, and the other players aren't as mid as they once
He's
midded.
still a really good player. He still has
It's true.
Potential, the skill hasn't gone away. It's all still there.
We are
the
still
problem
watching.
with their team for me is they're just such an uninspired team. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Always,
I don't think anyone watches this team and goes like, "Oh, I'm going to see something really like amazing," or they're good. Like the joke is, unironically, no one even disses Fallen as an IGL anymore. We just talk about Big Azera. Like we can almost celebrate the good IGL and just ask, what can he do with his squads? Instead, I just look at this team as like, is it a prison for Caserато? Look, at this point, it's self-imposed. He couldn't live on the outside, institutionalized, but he's just living in the penthouse of the prison, isn't he?
But it's also like, why is there no movement? You see players like Lux move away from Pain, and maybe like emotionally or behind the scenes he wouldn't have been a good fit, but you need like a solid aggressive rifler piece that Cello has never really been able to fulfill. And Lux is kind of a good player. There's Che Zeus or Che Jesus,
New Imperial guy,
there's a bunch of players that have been floating around in the Brazilian scene that are these hyper aggressive pieces that, if you set up correctly, actually can work. And yet we're sticking with Cello, we're sticking with Fallen. Like, it's just the lack of movement when there is talent available is what is put, I think, a lot of people off Furia. Is that other teams are being very pragmatic, they're trying to level up, while Furia are just like, we're already at a level. We're not trying to even compete for trophies anymore with the way that they've been, I guess, GMing this team.
Yeah, they're happy to just harvest sticker money and keep buying cars, I guess. Like, it's just become a literal job. They're 9-to-5 Counter-Strike players in a weird way. Where it's as long as we don't get fired, who cares? Could just say they've quiet quit already. Like, they're not really invested in being anything better than what they are.
Mm.
Disappointing, and we all pined for a day where there is a good IGL, a good AWPA, and Caserato on the same Brazilian team. But for now, it seems impossible or improbable to ever happen.
I mean, that said, at least the Skulls move was technically an upgrade, because they had the whole Kai situation and all that fallout, right?
They replaced the Make-A-Wish kid with someone who had still working limbs. They figured that one out. Credit to their GM. But man, that was almost unmissable, that trade. Just had to get anyone, and it probably would have been an improvement. So I can't give them too much credit. I'm just stuck looking at this and shaking my head. Will they make it out of groups? I don't think so. Probably have a better chance than Saw, though.
I mean, basically all the underdogs, I don't think we feasibly believe many of them are going to, like, get there, but that's the whole point of an underdog, right? It's like,
but we have a couple that we have legit cases for, Talent, GamerLegion on prep, some on wishful thinking. But yeah, there are a couple legit ones, then there's some like Furia where, like, if they do make it out, it'll be so painful to watch, because they're not going to do anything in the playoff. They're just not, really.
Put the frags in the bribe, bro.
Also, by the way, that is where people do need to just like understand this isn't the old Saul. You can't keep saying, but if they get nuked, there's no one left. There's about 2 people in the team who even played that map. What are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? That's a narrative from last year, guys. And we're not sports. You don't keep the same roster for all year. Also, kind of weirdly easier to do when you have like best of ones, and like Nuke is a team that is a map that a lot of teams just play, but they don't pick or ban.
Yeah. Bit rough for them, and they do end up winning, coming through on an Inferno and a Dust 2 miracle. So that says it all. But all right, do we want to have a brief chat about this Falcons team? Because they were about to be picked twice, but then weren't at all. So I think it's worth at least putting forward, what do we see in them? Because if there is a team to miss playoffs from this top 8, it'd be them or it'd be MOUZ, I think, from a lot of people's estimation.
Not impossible, yeah.
Potentially a G2. So what's the kind of the takeaway from Falcons? Because for me, initially I saw them play, didn't really get it. Nico looked rough, but he seems to have found his form, at least in terms of his role in the team and how to play his game. So where do we see them at this event and also in general, like their ceiling right now, even without any extra moves, without anyone else magically coming up and playing at a higher level? What is our kind of estimation of them?
Like, the thing is, this is the team, if you hadn't already figured it out, that just shows what a transcendental player Nico is. Like, he almost can just drop into any team in Counter-Strike, and just as long as you don't get clutter his space and you give him both his spots and a little bit of leeway to mid-round, he's fucking unbelievable. Like, he's got to be one of the highest impact individual players in all of World Counter-Strike, because as far as I know, every other superstar player, they still have to be led. They're still the one who follows the other person's call. They have to have, like, things set up for them. This is the only guy, as far as I can tell, can set up his team, frag, do the mid-round, win the clutch. Like, he can do fucking everything as far as I can. The joke is, the only thing he can't do is AWP, and he wasn't even bad at that. It's just I'd rather he was a rifler. Like, he is, like, unbelievably good. And the funny thing is, if you remember the first 6 months of CS2, he actually looked a bit off the pace in CS2. He looks fucking phenomenal the last 6 to 9 months. Like, the joke is, unironically, like, bear in mind, Monacy was falling off. He was probably going to be the best player in G2 again. Like, that was like a real status, and he was in a team with the superstar AWPer. So the problem in this squad, though, is he is required to do so much to win you a game, though. Like you just said earlier, I agree. Like, it isn't anymore just the Xantares short in Eternal Fight. It is massively the Nico short in fucking Falcons. Like, you can have like a slightly above average Dexter performance where he wins a clutch or two. You can have a T-half from Tessus, but that alone won't win you the game against like a top 6 or 7 team. This team has to have Nico basically be almost the best player in the server. But I'll give him credit, he does it. And I do think also this is why no person I know who's an expert gave Snacks credit last year in that second season. Because, bro, a lot of us think the mid-rounds were just what Nico was doing now in Falcons. Like, it was just him making that call, just him making his play. And in that team, I almost got the feeling Snacks' whole job was like, look, stay in your part of the fucking team, but, like, that's Nico's domain over there. You just leave him to do what he does. And he's fucking amazing at it. The problem is the rest of the pieces, like, nobody's bad, in my opinion. But, like, for example, I would have a very hard time telling you, watching this team, what is Kixan's style as an IGL in this squad? You know what I mean? Like, in Heroic, I could see it. Like, there's so many more pieces he clearly had to pass. In this team, it looks more like Nico's making a lot of the calls that I care about in the game. Then also you've got the factor that, like, Magisk at this point is the one survivor of the old Falcons because of name value, and he used to be such a mega underrated player. Even though he has some crazy players in this team, sometimes I see him have games that are a bit under par as well. I'm sort of like, fuck, I thought this was supposed to be because of the old Falcons suck, bro. Like, where are you? Like, isn't your level going to be a bit better? Are you supposed to sort of be like my third best player on this team? So I think the issue in this team is I actually think most of the players are good, but I'm not quite sure of the blend at the moment. They feel a bit like hit and miss for me as a team. I
think this is why I ended up straying away from this pick, is I also just didn't see that, like, heroic Kixen identity stamped across any of their games. I just haven't been impressed enough with Dexter. I haven't been impressed enough. I mean, Tessus, to be honest, is kind of the second best player on this team. But even then, I do agree that Nico seems to control a lot of it. It just makes me think, like, is Nico some kind of calling black hole where if he's in the roster, he has his own center of gravity and everyone else just gets weirdly warped, and the whole everyone else's style or atoms get shifted somehow? Because it does feel like everybody else is a little bit confused about what to do. And I guess I worry, but what I will say is that CT setups do seem pretty cohesive for Falcons. I think Tessus does a solid job. I think, honestly, Kixen creates quite a few crossfires where he is the first point of contact so that his teammates do better. I have, I think, a bit more faith on their CT side calling, but yeah, for T sides, it is just like the Nico show, and then sometimes Tessus will clean up with a few kills, and you know, maybe you'll get a Dexter pop-off if he somehow feels energized and starts screaming at people. Because I think Dexter does have that capacity to sometimes take over games, but he's also one that, you know, kind of it falls into the same highs and lows of, you know, the most recent example for the play-ins was G, as like this high-energy Chinese player. Dexter's a bit like that, where it's like he can be the best player in the server at times, riding that hype, but then it fall into a rut, and it's like hard to get him out of it. So, the team has a lot of potential, and it's why I almost picked them, but I still don't really know who they are just yet.
Yeah, you're right to question it, and yeah, the problem is with the whole Nico black hole of calling is it's so effective. Even if it is a problem for other people, it raises your floor so much. I mean, sure, the ceiling is you can't win a major, but I think most people would be happy with winning Katowice and Cologne every now and then, even without needing elite players next to him.
It's just how do you tell him not to do it when he does so well at it, right? So,
well, that's what I'm saying. Do you even want him to not do it?
So that's a great point, Doug.
That's my real problem. Like, I'm very happy winning prestige events, even if it does mean second place at the major every now and then. It's a pretty good trade-off. But all right, I think we'll wrap it up there. I mean, we could touch on the Mongols and some of the other teams we've left off, namely Tyloo and Saw. But Saw we talked about ad nauseum when we were pretending to talk about Furia. So I think we'll leave it there.
By the way, the day that Mongols ever do actually figure out whatever it is on stage, they will like instantly become like the 4th best team in the whole world and like could be in the bloody finals. Like that's the saddest thing about that one.
They
for
are
me.
terrifying.
It has the vibes of the old MOUZ where you're like, you're this close.
But they don't have the ability to just go international, right? They're a national-based team, and if you change the language, they have it harder. I think actually.
True.
Yeah, a lot of questions for them to figure out, but maybe this is the event where they do it. Thorin, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. If you made it this far in the video, you're my hero. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment telling us your thoughts on any of these picks. Also, remember to sub for more content, and members get access to more as well as earlier. So please join. We'll see you the next time. Goodbye.